get my arm up a little higher so that I can give you a salute. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I'm your host, Chris. This is a show very straightforward. It's about comic books. We are going to talk about the latest comic book news. We're going to do some comic book reviews. No interviews tonight. It's just going to be us, the live chat, me. This is kind of the fun stuff. If there's time at the end, maybe I'll do a little bit of inking, like do some drawing or sketching or something like that. But yeah, there is so much fun news to talk about, like some huge stuff with a wide variety of companies, a wide variety of creators. I'm so excited to riff on this stuff. And the comics, like I have opinions. Some of this stuff I liked more than I would have expected to. Some of this stuff was only and then some stuff in here kind of like won me over a little bit more than I was expecting. There was even some stuff that I was like expecting to like that I was kind of like, not so much. But I'll give some detailed breakdown of that later on in the show. There's plenty to talk about there. Let me give some shout outs to folks that are in the chat. And I'll always start with the super chat. Gotta highlight that. Thank you for the support to Steve. Steve is always here, it seems, and I appreciate that. Hot day all over the U.S. I heard, drink cold Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Also, drink your water, folks. I am one of the worst at remembering to drink enough water. I legit have to just sort of constantly remind myself, stay hydrated. Bad things happen when you are not hydrated. But thank you very much for the super chat there, Steve. Let me just rattle through some names that I see in here. That's awesome. Oh, hey, it's my sister. That's always nice. Everybody, I think we're going to have a really good show tonight. Wow, look at all these names. This is awesome. I'm seeing new names. I'm seeing lots of regular names. This is so cool. Imagine not drinking water. Couldn't be me. Well, I think I understand that you're being a mite sarcastic there because it's definitely me. And I like water. I sincerely do. I'm just terrible at remembering. I don't feel super thirsty all the time. So I'm just terrible at remembering. Yeah, I can just sit down and especially like editing. But I just found that you have to like sort of prepare. It's as simple as like put that water right in front of yourself and I'll remember because I can visually, oh, right, I see the water. I'm supposed to drink it. Anyway, yes, you're here right at the start. Thank you and welcome, people. Let's see. They got a sugar-free Bomb Pop Mountain Dew. Oh my gosh. That's probably going to be at a place like Walmart or something. I gotta check that out. That sounds fun. I'm just having a coffee tonight, but that's going to get me all pepped up. Tell you what, let's get right into the news. Let me think. Yeah, is there anything else? Oh, I know what I can talk about real quick. Sorry. I'll just recap this. I did go to a comic convention on Saturday. There's a local convention here in Washington State at our state fairgrounds every summer. It's simply called Washington Summer Con. And I used to really, really love this convention. It's newer, so it's not like it's been around that long, but it's local to me, like a 25-minute drive tops, free parking. It's a pretty cheap entrance fee. They'd always get some comic book name creators. You know, we've had a wide variety of newer and older creators. You know, Kyle Higgins was a guest one year. We've had like Marv Wolfman, Jim Shooter, and Jim Starlin. You know, like people that are known. This year, like there was like Ryan Stegman and Mark Brooks, and writers like Dan Slott and Steve Orlando. Really, you know, that part's nice, right? And the convention area is big because it's on our fairgrounds. So we've got several buildings. There's a huge outdoors area, lots of food options, lots of good food trucks. So it's usually been a fun convention. I had a good time, but I had to work to have a good time this year because it's gotten more and more expensive every year, and they've had less and less comics to the point where I'd say they only had about 8 or 9 comics guests this year, not many vendors for comics. Or comics related stuff like, I couldn't find, say, a t-shirt manufacturer or anything. No, instead they've really been pivoting, and this year was a huge change where it's like all actors, just tons and tons, like 120 actors, which is popular apparently. There's lots of people that showed up and were in lines, and some of it's related, there was the cast of Daredevil. Okay, that makes sense. There's voice actors for various like anime or, Ninja Turtles and stuff. And I go, okay, that makes sense too. But then there's lots of people like, from shows like Chips and TJ Hooker and 90210 and Saved by the Bell. And I'm going, this is pretty far from comic books. And it just didn't interest me. I don't have a lot of interest in waiting in those lines or getting a photo with, somebody that used to be a pro wrestler. I just don't care that much. Oh, hey, I got another super chat. Steve, you're keeping me in business. I appreciate it. I guess I didn't know that Steve Orlando was from Syracuse, your neck of the woods. I knew that he was from the East Coast, and I was pretty sure New York, but I didn't realize that specifically upstate New York. That's really cool. So anyway, I don't know if any of you guys have things like that, like, a local Comic-Con. I would just say this one kept getting bigger and it was exciting for a while, but it's pivoted. It's pivoted to being one of those more celebrity conventions, which I'm glad that other people are having a good time at it. It's just not what really interests me. I had to sort of work to get my value out of it. Like I saw some friends that were there. I enjoyed all the cosplay. Like I appreciate it. I took time to look at that. And then, I only bought like 3 comic books. That's like all I could find to buy. So I was a little disappointed with that personally. I wish I could afford to go to like some of the bigger conventions, like there was Heroes Con this weekend, which had just so many comic book guests. Sounds amazing. But I did have fun. I just had to work for it, and I doubt I'll go again. That's fair. What 3 comics did I get? I got a hardcover of the first Fantastic Four volume by Dan Slott and had him sign that. I got a book by an artist-writer that I like called Corey Lewis, called Console Wars. He also did a book back in the day called Shark Knife that I liked. And I got Carmilla, which is a vampire story by Sue Lee and Amy Chu. And Sue Lee was one of the guests there, so I had her sign it. She was the artist on it. These days she's working on, she's writing Chitara, I believe, for Dynamite. But Carmilla is an interesting vampire story. It predates Dracula. It's an Irish vampire story about like a female vampire. And it was slightly adapted into a Hammer horror movie that Jim Mafood and I reviewed here on this channel. So anyway, yeah, those are the 3 I got. And that was nice. Thank you, Steve. What 5 non-comic guests would you want to meet? So they don't have anything to do with comics? I guess like there are certainly actors, writers, directors that I respect and admire. It would be some of them I've met though, like Bruce Campbell would be one, but I've met him. William Shatner would be one, but I've met him. So I don't know. 5 is a lot. I'd love to meet some directors like Scorsese, Sam Raimi, even James Gunn, just because he's doing all the comic book stuff these days. I think that those would be interesting people to talk to. Non-comics, but like still might be theoretically at a comic convention. Well, that would exclude Scorsese. Yeah, Vampire Lovers. You guys know it. But that's like based on the same mythology. Carmilla by Amy Chu and Sue Lee. So I picked that up. Pro wrestlers. Let me think. Yeah, there's probably some pro wrestlers that I would enjoy meeting. I think it would be fun to talk to like John Cena and stuff. Um, I don't know. I don't know who else I would really care to meet. Maybe Jackie Chan. I like Jackie Chan. I think he's gotten a little weird with his personal politics as he's become an older guy. But you know what? I really love so many of his movies, and he's just a born entertainer that I think it would be interesting to meet him. David Ortiz, he'd be one, right? Your New England guy. Sure, yeah, Big Poppy. Of course, I'd love to meet David Ortiz. Sure. Yeah, that's true. There's probably a bunch of athletes that would be exciting. Yeah. I guess you know what though, guys? The reason I do this show is comics are my favorite storytelling medium. I would get way more excited to meet, say, Jim Mahfood for the first time than I would to meet, say, Steven Spielberg. That's what excites me. Would it be interesting to meet these people and have a conversation? No question. But, you know, like I've met people like, I don't know, Bruce Willis and stuff like that. And it's not that exciting. Comics excite me more. Anyway, I just wanted to recap a little bit of the convention. And that was kind of a fun way to just sort of meander about, let people trickle in, and we'll get started on the news. So let's see. Do I have my media assets ready?
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
It's time for news. Trying to duplicate my thumbnail. All right, let's get into it. There's a bunch. I'm going to start with something kind of light. We'll ease into the cool bits of news. I'll give you a little bit of what Marvel's doing for Trick or Read, which is their Halloween freebies. So Marvel announced these 5 comics are going to be the ones that they give away. Not give away, really. They sell at really low price, and then the stores can give away for Halloween. But I kind of love this idea. Free comic book day, super fun. But trick or treat is legit, you know, kids going out and asking for stuff. I think it just makes sense to attach it in that way and like give people entry points into reading comics. So yeah, there's like a kid's book like Spidey and His Amazing Friends. They've got their X-Men 97, because that was obviously a huge hit at Disney Plus. Same thing with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. We've got Venom Lethal Protector. I was a little surprised at that. And the Fantastic Four Godzilla book. Fair enough. Trick or Read, I'll just give you some history on this. Started Halloween of 2020, although before that, Halloween Comic Fest, basically the same idea, slightly different branding. That started back in 2012. So we've been getting free comic books on Halloween for over a decade now, which is more than I realized. Obviously related to Free Comic Book Day, which actually started all the way back in May of 2002. I remember that year too, because that was the new Spider-Man movie coming out with Tobey Maguire. That was a big deal they were like, the industry was like, Spider-Man as a live action movie is a big deal. We need to do something in comics to get all this new interest. And that was smart. I like Halloween. Let me ask you guys, here's a poll, right? Here's a poll. Which holiday do you enjoy more, Christmas or Halloween? And I realize that not everybody celebrates Christmas, so a bunch of you might just choose Halloween by default. But I would love to hear which holiday do you like more between those two. No voting for Flag Day. I'm not asking for that. I want to see Halloween. Right? You always put on a party. Barry also. So Halloween Halloween taking an early lead. I like Halloween. I'd still choose Christmas. Okay, good. There's at least one person that's going to be with me for Christmas there. Halloween, because it's scarier. That is fun. Halloween. By the way, sometime when you've got a little bit more time, look up the history of Halloween as a celebration, as a holiday here in America. Because yes, it's got some ties to, Druid calendars and stuff like that. But it really became a holiday here in the States because I want to say the 1950s, teenagers were really becoming delinquents and causing a lot of vandalism and stuff. And one lady in a town was like, let's put on a party for all these kids so that we can keep our eyes on them. And we're just going to tie it to Halloween. We're going to give them free food, like candy and stuff like that. And it's a really interesting history. I'm just giving you a super digested version. I'm sure there are YouTube videos about that. Halloween's less pressured. That's a good idea. That's a good point. Halloween, Christmas, I guess. Too commercial. Halloween. Yeah, I don't know. Captain Stubing Recognition Day. Christmas because it's longer. I do like the family and the dinner aspect of Christmas as I get older. I get paid more to work on Christmas. That's a reason. Halloween, Samhain. All right. I think Halloween won it. That was interesting. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to keep moving because we've got so much good news, but thank you for participating. So there was an expose that came out this week that alleges that Stan Lee had a ghostwriter, like actually wrote the full stuff for him. Not just, how some artists say, I kind of did most of the writing, Stan did the dialogue. No, we're saying like the full script, maybe by somebody else. Let's get into that. So, comics journalist Zach Rabinoff and Josephine Reisman wrote an article on the website Flaming Hydra. Now, it is behind a paywall, so I'm going to have a link to it at the bottom here. It's something, I want to say that it's just $2 to sign up for a month, so that it's not too much if you want to read this article, and it's a big one. But so behind the paywall, they've got a big article where they go into detail about how they found evidence that Stan Lee hired a specific ghostwriter in his Silver Age Marvel days. Let's get into it. They allege that a man named Ron White, who they describe as a gay, disabled, meth-addicted playwright, has letters and receipts proving that he wrote Spider-Man, including the famous issue where Mary Jane first appears. I screen capped it here saying, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." I would argue that's probably the second most famous line in Spider-Man history, right? After great power, great responsibility. I don't know. Could this be true? It does sound sensational, but they do argue that they've got some evidence. They're not just claiming it, okay? So that I just want to put that out there, but I also put in the word allegedly. I just want to protect myself because I don't know yet. I don't know. Supposedly, Ron White became the writer after Ditko left. So like sort of the Romita era. Okay. Now, Roy Thomas, obviously, was Stan Lee's protege, always has nice things to say about Stan, but he would also be in a place to know. And he responded to this saying that he thinks that White is exaggerating things, that maybe White was hired by Marvel, but doing things like press releases and sort of gopher work and things like that. He's like, I don't think that Ron rose to the level of like writing these full scripts. I think he's exaggerating. And I have to admit, that sounds possible. That does sound possible. But anyway, there's the website, flaminghydra.com, and they titled it A Swingin' Surprise or Two. Pretty big allegation. There's supposedly a book that's been in the works for a long time that has been ready to make the claim that Stan used ghostwriters as well. So this might just sort of be beating them to the punch with some details. That would be a bit of a stretch. Yeah, I don't think Roy Thomas would stand for that. The reason like this guy would have theoretically been in this position was he was a Yale graduate that went, at this point in time, Stan Lee used to do a lecture circuit at college campuses, and he would have theoretically met Ron there. And they do have some sort of like, letters back and forth. So there's some sort of a paper trail. There's some sort of a paper trail. He's arguing that it was on, or they're arguing that it's mostly on Spider-Man after Ditko left. Which, if it was true, I don't know, but if it was true, it makes a certain amount of sense because Ditko probably had been primarily writing those Spider-Man stories, so maybe Stan could have used some help. That's the argument for it. I don't know. You can look into it yourself. I just wanted to put the news out there. I lean towards not fully believing it, but there might be a germ of truth within it. I think that time will tell. Speaking about some more Spider-Man stuff, the 90s animated Spider-Man show head writer is a little upset with Marvel. I don't know if you came across this. There's some reason for him to be a little upset. So, first of all, Spider-Man the Animated Series, it wrapped up back in 1998. They'd done 65 episodes. It actually ended on a cliffhanger. Mary Jane had been pulled into the multiverse, or at least another dimension. Spider-Man met all these sort of variants of himself. And then it ended. They didn't resolve that storyline. So, you know, there were a lot of fans of that show. That was a popular show, and that little bit was never quite addressed. There was like, you know, a follow-up show that you could argue sort of took place in that continuity. But anyway, this show itself never really got a definitive conclusion. So this week, Marvel announced that they're going to do a limited series that wraps up that cliffhanger. And it will be written by J.M. DeMatteis, one of my favorite Spider-Man writers, did Kraven's Last Hunt, for instance, and artist Jim Toe. And it says that it's going to involve Spider-Man returning from the multiverse with Mary Jane and some new villains coming with them. Okay. So this week, with that announcement, the head writer of the animated series is a guy named John Semper Jr., works primarily in animation, seems to have sort of retired somewhere around 2017, I would say, just looking at his IMDb credit list, but I could be a little wrong there. I don't know how, you know, some of these projects take a long time. Anyway, he posted to social media that he is not involved in this in any way, that Marvel never even reached out to him, and that the story is not based on any of his ideas. He seems to have like a lot of proprietary interest in this. And I do get that, because here's the thing. John Semper Jr. did introduce the idea of a Spider-Verse. That obviously was something that became very popular with Dan Slott's run on Spider-Man, and now the animated movies and everything. Well, the first one to say that there are, you know, multiple Spider-Men that are similar across different realities, that did originate in this show. That was an idea by John Semper Jr., and that idea has become, obviously, very profitable to Marvel. Yes, that's what I'm saying, is that John Semper Jr. absolutely responsible for the Spider-Verse. Absolutely. It would be hard to argue that that isn't the Spider-Verse, and that like there was something that really predated it. I mean, you could go like, oh, well, what about What If or something? It's not the same, is it? Like different Spider-Men meeting each other. So moving on, there's a little more. Another quote from Semper from social media. Yes, it would have been nice, some might even say respectful, if Marvel had reached out to me at some point as a courtesy. But I have long ago abandoned all expectation that Marvel would acknowledge any of my contributions to the Marvel Universe, like, for instance, my creation of what is now known as the Spider-Verse. So there you go. That said, come on. I think by the 90s, you should kind of know that it's work for hire when you work for Marvel or DC. Unless you have a special contract, you know, I don't think it should be a surprise that the company owns these concepts and can continue them without you. Sometimes I think that there are writers that are proud of that. I think that John Byrne and Jonathan Hickman are two people that are honestly proud to introduce new ideas into these companies and have the company build on those ideas. I think that they legit seem proud of that stuff. I would just say, like, I don't think you can. I think you could be offended in the 60s and 70s, but at a certain point, you kind of know what the deal is. Let's see. Hank Azaria did voice of Venom. He did? Hank Azaria did the Venom voice in this series? If that's true, I definitely did not know that. I remember that Mark Hamill did the voice of Hobgoblin. That's all I remember. Work for hire is such a scam. It would be cool if all these characters became public domain. I think that there should be somewhere in the middle. I think that things should not necessarily become public domain, but that their creators should have rights to them, certainly while they're alive. Maybe extending into like one generation down, and then public domain. I think that that's fair, because there needs to be incentive to create and to get rewarded for your creations. But it's a tricky thing. It's definitely Hank Azaria. That's amazing. All right. I mean, obviously, I know that he does like voice acting because, I mean, Simpsons. Come on, and he's a funny guy. I just never knew that he did Venom. That bit of trivia never crossed my mind. I also am of the age that the voice I hear in my mind is basically Christopher Barnes. I didn't watch a whole lot of this show because I was like graduating high school and going into college, so it wasn't like something I watched a lot of. But it was still like it's either that or the voice from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which, by the way, had a banger of an intro song. Moving forward, there's tons more cool news to talk about. Folks, The Punisher is absolutely joining the next Spider-Man movie. I didn't see that coming. So The Hollywood Reporter announced John Bernthal has signed to appear in Spider-Man Brand New Day as Frank Castle, the Punisher. Yeah. The film is going to shoot this summer in England. It's slated for release next summer, July 31st. Director is Destin Daniel Cretton, the guy that directed Shang-Chi, which I think is one of the better movies of that phase. The report also mentioned, I hadn't seen this before, but that Zendaya and Jacob Batalon will both return. They don't say how important they will be, but like MJ and Ned will be in the movie. So this is all like official stuff, but no word on the plot. All we can say is that now that we know the Punisher is definitely in it, that lends some credence to the idea that it might be more of a gang war type of a movie, certainly a more street level Spider-Man movie with a character like Mr. Negative. We could get like Tombstone. We could get Hammerhead. I don't know, but I think that's a good idea, because as soon as you like sort of start comparing all the different live action Spider-Man movies to each other, or even the animated ones, one thing they haven't really done is that more street level crime that he often approaches in the comics, you know, like going up against guys like Kingpin or Crime Master. I think it's a good idea. I think it's cool that they'll add Punisher to this. I'm hopeful that could imply maybe Daredevil. I mean, keep in mind, he did cameo in the last one. So, well, I don't know. Is Kingpin the only villain to be a villain towards three different heroes? No, I think you could argue that like Joker and Doctor Doom have definitely been big enemies to more than one hero. But Kingpin definitely is more prominent, you're right, for being an ongoing villain in both Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Punisher comics. Definitely. That's good news. Yes. No, boy. Yeah, I don't want Jacko, but you never know. Yeah, Lex Luthor is definitely somebody that's gone up against at least the Justice League and stuff like that. I think that there's a possibility. It would be probably more of a cameo, but there's a possibility. I'll just say that, like, it's interesting seeing one of the. This has to be the first time a TV character got this level of prominence in a movie. Because most of the time it's going from the movies to the TV show, or the TV shows mention it and they might get a little cameo or a mention, but this is definitely a bigger deal. Absolutely. I think that was right around the time of Acts of Vengeance, because I think Ron Lim drew that in the Captain America book. I wonder how they're going to handle an R-rated character. Well, I've heard other people say that too, EJ. And by the way, I'm always glad to have you here, man. Really, really impressed with a book of yours that I will be talking about later. I just want to mention that real quick. EJ is the artist of Blood and Thunder, and I like it. But here's the thing. I think if you look at the first several years of Punisher, he was definitely more of a PG-13 character. I think even if you look at most of his ongoing series outside of the Max stuff by Ennis and Dillon, it's not that bloody per se. You know, he is killing bad guys, but, you know, it's not like they focus on gore and extreme kills most of the time. So I don't think it would be that hard to use a guy like Punisher in Spider-Man. I really don't. Like, I think I can see him still, like, using in a PG-13 movie, using Uzi to shoot down like 30 henchmen, and they don't have to, like, make it too bloody. I think Punisher's versatile enough to sort of do both. I think so is Deadpool, to be honest. I know that those movies are rated R. I would say that more the reason for those being rated R is the language that they use, like, for the jokes. They could probably easily tone down some of the violence. In fact, didn't they release like a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2? Anyway, I don't think it's that hard. Kingpin has definitely been an ongoing main villain for Spider-Man originally, then Daredevil and Punisher. Like, he's been an ongoing, like, big villain for those three characters, no question. That would be cool. I'm sure we'll at least get some variant covers around the time that it comes out, featuring homages to that famous cover. I'm sure we will. Let's see. So we got some new Marvel DC crossover details. I mean, if you're going to do this, you gotta bring in your biggest artists and writers. And hopefully use your biggest properties. Because you're not going to do this, on an ongoing basis. So you really have to make these crossovers special. And I would say that a bunch of them in the 90s weren't very special. I think a lot of them were pretty forgettable, unfortunately. I will be doing a bonus episode within this week, I believe. I should have it ready for my patrons at the $2 and above level, where I'm going to be talking about the Fantastic Four Superman crossover. Special episode just for patrons. It's not a bad comic. I just think a lot of the stuff that Marvel and DC were putting together in the 90s, it wasn't always special. I think it should be I think that to justify two companies working together like this, you have to put your best foot forward. And sometimes they have. I think JLA Avengers by Busiek and Perez is fantastic. Very, very fun. Great example of a crossover. I think that X-Men Teen Titans, also fantastic crossover. One of the best. But what do we get here? I'll explain. Marvel revealed some of the backup comics that they'll have in their Deadpool Batman issue, the one shot that they're releasing in September. So I guess this will be a pretty big book, and they'll have some smaller stories in the back. So what are their big guns here? Well, they're going to bring in Kevin Smith, who will still definitely sell comics. He had acclaimed runs on both Daredevil and Green Arrow. That's really where he started his comics, aside from the Clerk stuff. And I say that because Jim Mafood is here in the chat, I believe. And obviously Jim got a big part of his start doing those awesome Clerks comics. But, you know, that was some of Kevin Smith's earliest stuff in comics, was Daredevil and Green Arrow. And he's going to write them together. And they got Adam Kubert to draw. Cover here by Marco Cicchetto. Looks really nice. We've got Captain America and Wonder Woman, two more patriotic themed characters, by Chip Zdarsky and Terry Dodson. Terry Dodson does a great Wonder Woman, really good at adventure comics too. So that's a nice fit. That's a nice fit. I'm talking really positive because I think that this is kind of cool. And we get Jeff the Landshark and Crypto together. That's going to be by Kelly Thompson and Gurihiru. Could be fun. Could be fun. By the way, each of those stories will justify a variant cover, including the one that I'm showing you here. That's a fun one to do. Oh man, I feel like Marvel DC kind of owes that to us. That out of the Marvel versus DC matchups, the Lobo Wolverine is easily the most disappointing, where they just tumble behind a bar and within like 2 panels, the fight is over and Wolverine's just like, I won. Somehow I won. You don't even get to see it. Dodson art might get you to buy that comic. I respect that. Yeah, I think the main book is what's going to get me to get it. But if you're going to do it, I think the idea of getting Kevin Smith on the 2 Marvel DC characters that he's famous for writing, I think that's a good idea. I agree. I don't know how Wolverine would win that fight, but he did somehow. Adam Kubert. I mean, what's canon? Who knows? Who knows? Any matchups you would want to see? Maybe like, because they've said that they're going to do some other stuff in 2026. Marvel and DC said that they will be doing some other books together going into 2026. What characters would you want to see match up? Like, what do you think are their biggest guns right now? I think with the movie coming out, Superman is probably going to get a big bump. So, but who do you team him up with that's appropriate over at Marvel? That's popular and, you know, could tell a good story. Alfred dates Aunt May. There you go. Spider-Boy and Trinity. You know, for a backup, that's a pretty darn good idea. I don't know if it would like be enough to draw in new readers, but Peacemaker Punisher is not a bad idea. That's the kind of thing, like outside the box thinking that I like. Ghostwriter versus High Pike from Hack-O-Lantern. Because why not? Everybody deserves at least a little fun on Halloween. Damn you, Jim Mafood. You think that they always turn up lame? I don't think that they always do. I think that some of them, not too memorable, but I think some fantastic. Guardians of the Galaxy versus Darkseid. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy New Gods could actually be a blast, going with something that's like so steeped in mythology versus some characters that are presented as being so like new. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Kite Man and Stilt Man. So someone was challenging me the other day, like, how would you tell a good Stiltman story? And I'd go, I'd make him, paraplegic. Like he lost his legs and he got some of those like, bouncy ones that the professional runners use. And like from there, he just decided to make them get even bigger. All right. You guys have lots of ideas. That's fun. That's fun. Yeah. What else have we got? We've got some DC news. I'll pivot from Marvel into Marvel DC into DC. It's the perfect segue on the perfect show. You're welcome. No, an Absolute book at DC is taking a hiatus, something that we see occasionally in popular manga. I would say generally a Marvel or DC book does not take a hiatus. They get fill-in issues or they end, right? Like, it's not normal for it to take a scheduled hiatus. So I found that interesting. But writer Dennis Camp posted to social media that Absolute Martian Manhunter is taking a hiatus. Specifically, he said, to those asking, Absolute Martian Manhunter will be taking a 2-month break so that the creative team and quality can stay consistent. We'll be back after the 2-month break with another 6-issue arc. I have to imagine a bunch of people out there would agree that, you know, if there's a good creative team on a book, that you generally would be okay with a hiatus if it kept them working on things without a fill-in issue, right? Because we've talked about this here and there on the show. I think fill-in issues can surprise you. And monthly, I get, like, you want to keep the audience engaged. But I do think that there's something to be said for a consistent tone, a consistent story, the same creative team. I think that a hiatus makes more sense overall. I really do. It works in manga. Why couldn't it work here? That's a good way to maintain a book consistently. Absolutely. Thank you, by the way, for being here, Steppen. Anyway, there's a little more to this. The title was originally, if we remember back when it was first solicited, it was going to be a 6-issue series. And then 2 days after the first issue came out, it was doing very well. And DC said, hey, we're expanding it to 12 issues. So I think some of this is probably them getting caught up. You know, they were sort of, if you pace yourself for a race, you sort of pace yourself, right? And they were pacing themselves to do a 6-issue story. And then they sort of got surprised early on, like, oh, great, we get 6 more issues. But I also think that this book specifically, I mean, Javier Rodriguez's art is a huge, huge part of what this book is. Javi has come up with a very specific storytelling style. And that's not to take anything away from Dennis Camp, who's got some of these big ideas. I think it makes sense. I like the idea of taking a hiatus, and I'd be okay with almost any superhero book taking a hiatus if it meant that creative team stayed on the project. I would be okay with that. Saga definitely went on a hiatus. Personally, I'm willing to wait for it. Maybe not everybody is. Let's see. I got plenty to read during the hiatus, so yeah, I'd rather they take a break to maintain quality. Looking at you, Ultimate Spider-Man. I think that, does a hiatus disrupt some of the flow? You know, the momentum you're creating? Potentially, yes. Potentially, yes. But as far as consistency in what the story is and what's being delivered, you know, it's going to be a trade-off. It's going to be a trade-off. Well, I know what you guys are saying there with like something like Battle Chasers, and there have been other books that, you know, basically just stopped, and then eventually we finally got the conclusion, right? Like the Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk, or Kevin Smith's Bullseye book. I think that those were finished after a long time, but that's a little different. I don't think that those were like just a planned 2-month hiatus. Well, this is an interesting bit of insight from a professional artist, right? So Steppen says, I've done hiatuses and it kept my output strong and quality from declining while helping me keep love for the creative process. I think that's fair. It's very artificial in some ways that we came up with this system where a comic has to come out every month. Like, who says that's the way it absolutely has to be? That's a business decision, not a creative decision. And yeah, you have to make money for it to be worthwhile. But but you have to maintain a good story to engage the readers. And I think that there's a compromise that's very reasonable for the occasional hiatus. It's just something I wanted to talk about a little bit. A hiatus is tricky on the Ultimate books. You're right, because they're sort of progressing in real time. Oh, shoot. Tell you what. I forgot to include it in news, but let me jump in. Let me give you a bonus piece of news. I wish Big Numbers was just on a hiatus. So this week, Zack Davisson is the script adapter on Ultimate X-Men with Peach Momoko. He helps her figure out how the story should work, more than just translation, says, hey, it would make sense for your story idea to involve this, element or from Marvel. For instance, these days, there's a psychic battle happening, and it was Zack that said, well, that should specifically take place on what Marvel calls the astral plane. Anyway, on social media this week, he said that the Ultimate books end at issue 24, as in, once the maker returns and there's the big battle, that's going to somehow represent the end of the Ultimate run for all these books. Once the initial ones get to issue 24. And he says that was the plan as it was announced. I've looked back and I didn't see anything indicating Marvel ever announced that it was like a 2-year plan. I didn't see anything to that effect. I think that probably is something that they talked about behind the scenes. He's deleted that social media post. So I'm sure Marvel was like, hey, plan may have changed. Keep that under wraps. I don't know. I'm speculating wildly here, but he had said that the books were going to end at issue 24. I think that with how successful something like Ultimate Spider-Man is, because that does sell very well for Marvel, I think it will continue past that. But I also think that it's really likely that we will get new creative teams on a bunch of those books. I think it would be very hard to imagine Marvel signing Peach to do more than 2 straight years writing and illustrating the same book. That's, she's a workaholic and dedicated, but these days, that's a big run, especially on something that you don't yourself own. It would be different if it was like, a publisher asking you to continue your own property or something. Like if Image was like, hey, Robert, you should keep doing Walking Dead. Should I? So anyway, we will see if that actually comes to pass, but that's something Zack posted and took down. Maybe that was the original plan. I think it probably could have been the original plan to do like a 2-year run and then see how it goes. All right. Going back to the news that I had written up. Batman is going to do blind bags, folks. That is just where we are with variant covers and such. But you know what? There's a lot of good variant covers out there. It doesn't bother me very much. But this week, DC announced several variant covers for September 3rd's Batman #1 by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez. It's going to also include a program similar to the recent Battle Beast blind bag for #1. Oh, you don't like the blind bag stuff? But you don't have to do it. It's just an option. 20th Century Men is an Image book, I believe. Volume 4 of Batman #1, if I need to be clear. But yes, these companies restart their numbering a lot of times when there's a new creative team. So it's Volume 4, Batman #1. All right, so what are we talking about, though? To celebrate the launch on September 3rd, DC is offering an exclusive blind bag edition of Batman #1 from participating retailers. They're calling it the Blind as a Bat Poly Bag. Okay, that's a little clever for a name. But it will cost $9.99 versus the $4.99 for the regular issue. So for, you get basically a foil version of one of the variant covers because they're releasing a bunch of variant covers. Main comic, $4.99. If you want to get one of the variant covers, it's got a cardstock cover on it. It's $1 more. Or you can get this blind bag for $10 basically. Here's the artists that they've got. They've got David Aja. All right. Got J. Scott Campbell. We haven't seen that one yet. We've got Gabriel Delato, the Jorge Jimenez main cover. Andy Kubert. We've got Stanley Art Germ Lau. Jim Lee, who we haven't seen. Frank Whiteley. That's going to be hard for me to say no to. Big fan of Frank Whiteley over here. He's one of my favorites. He just is. Mark Silvestri. I like that. I think that's very cool. And Julian Totino Tedesco. So slightly new Batman costume. Gray and blue. Slightly different bat emblem. I like it though. The design of the costume, I'm saying. Let's see. The Delato cover is so nice. Yeah, I understand. They're just the Jim Lee and the J. Scott Campbell covers they haven't shared yet. If it was $5, I'd buy like 4 of them, but at 10, I'll probably only get 1. Foil is cool. I don't know that it's really something that I feel the need to get, but these things do sell. A lot of people like variant covers, and if that's what interests you in the hobby, and that's what helps support this whole field, I'm fine with that. Frank is just one of my faves. Love it, love it, love it. You're paying twice as much for a blind bag. Why not pick up the one you want? One is just, I guess, the thrill of what will you get, but the second is that the ones in the blind bag are foil as well. So that's why they cost a little bit more. Just to explain, it's because the ones in the blind bag are also foil. That is a totally fair argument. I think things like the foil and holographic backgrounds work best when they are, like I was just saying, when they're backgrounds. When it's the whole artwork, I think it makes the dark colors and the light colors just blend together too much. It is a little hard to see. Yeah, I don't know. I'd personally rather, for a price like that, I'd say create a lenticular cover. Give me like the illusion of some depth or something. That could be fun. The AHA one is so nice and simple and like really good graphic design. Foiled again. Nice to see you, Randy. Is there going to be a new Lobo comic? Well, this is just because artist and writer Sean Gordon Murphy posted this image here to his social media, and he said, "Work in progress. I can't say yet what this is for." So if it was just for him, I don't think he'd say, "I can't say what this is for." This is a tease. All I can figure is Lobo is going to appear in the Supergirl movie that DC Studios is making. Maybe DC is considering relaunching a Lobo book to tie in with that. You know, they did do that with Supergirl recently. Most comics seem to get a nice relaunch with some big names a little before a movie comes out or right as the movie comes out. Oh, he's bringing back Sheriff Lobo. Really? Okay. I'll take a close look at anything Sean Gordon Murphy draws. He's done some great looking books. You know what I think is an underrated one? I'm sure a bunch of people in the audience have read it or at least heard of it, but Joe the Barbarian, Grant Morrison and Sean Gordon Murphy, about, you know, a diabetic kid having an issue and imagining himself in a world populated by all of his toys. That was a really cool book. I liked that one a lot. That was where that was the first time I really noticed Sean Gordon Murphy's art and was like, I like this stuff. Oh, absolutely. I mean, one would hope that if they do a Lobo book, that's me speculating, but that if they do, please, if anything, called for a cover by Simon Beasley, please, DC, pay him whatever he wants, please. Almost 200 people watching and only 67. I'll take 67 likes, but thank you. Yes, it's always nice if you can take 2 seconds to hit the like button. It'll push the show to more people, and that's good for me. I like the character of Lobo too. Nice to see you, Izzy. Izzy, am I remembering right? I was talking about this last week. Did you join that watch hub on Global Comics? I want to say that I saw your name there. Beasley is Lobo. Yeah, he came up with the version because Lobo looked a lot different in his early appearances. He took a while to evolve into what he looks like now, but it was Beasley that made him into a biker, and that's just such a cool look. And you'd think it would become dated or something because, it was like a 90s version of a biker, but no, I think it's definitive. I mean, they even DC tried to sort of redo his look with New 52, I think, but that's just, Beasley came up with the definitive look for Lobo. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, DC Finest Lobo collection. Maybe. Congrats. Yeah. We talked about that last week, folks, but Global Comics has a hub now with a bunch of comic book YouTubers they invited to participate, so that's pretty cool. Sam Keith could do an interesting Lobo. I agree with that. There's a lot of artists I'd like to see really. Hey, I mean, speaking of something like that, like we've got him in the chat somewhere, but I think Jimmy Jams, Jim Mafood, would probably do a pretty iconic Lobo. I think if you could ever get Tony Moore to do interior pages again, please put Tony Moore on Lobo. And if not, let's get a variant cover by Tony Moore on Lobo because he also kills it on Lobo. Kills it. Man, I remember thinking that the Lobo paramilitary Christmas special was so edgy when I was like a teenager. I was like, oh my God, I hope nobody catches me watching this, like reading this. And it is, but only for teenagers. It's great, though. It's great. You know what? Get out of here. Jim Davis. I hate Mondays, but I love dolphins. All right. What's the best series to start with? Either the paramilitary Christmas one-shot or the original 4-issue series by Beasley and Keith Giffen. And I forget the other people on the team, but that's definitely the place to start. That gives you everything you need. All right. Sorry, I've got something open here that I'm going to close. It was distracting me. DC is changing up their distribution. Oh my God. So Universal Distribution, they are a Canadian distributor of comics. So, if you live in Vancouver or Toronto or somewhere up in Saskatchewan and you get comics, they're probably getting delivered by Universal Distribution. They recently won the bid for Diamond Distribution, but specifically their gaming division. They bought that. Alliance is the wing that distributes all the game stuff. They bought that. Well, they're expanding. This week, DC announced, it came out that DC is now going to be distributed by Universal in the United States, along with Lunar, who they're currently with. That is a big move for Universal, expanding into the U.S. market. People thought that they may have interest in that when they started, when they became a bidder on Diamond. But this marks them really getting into the U.S. market. Obviously, got plenty of experience with a big country like Canada, and there's clearly room for more distribution options. So I thought that was pretty big. Them, like DC, not being exclusive with Lunar, but going with Universal, and that Universal is trying to get into the whole act. Lunar currently has DC and Image. Marvel, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, those are all with Penguin Random House, as far as some of the bigger publishers go. Just as an update. Yeah, they've got the Diamond Alliance warehousing and stuff like that, and a whole network, a system. Obviously, they can pivot using that to get comics to a whole new country. Pretty big. Going to talk about some more distribution type stuff. So, oh my God, this one just let me take a drink before I continue. It's just coffee. The new Diamond owner, allegedly, to be clear, insulted their vendors. This is gonna, oh my God, this is such a shit show. The whole, you thought that the bankruptcy by Diamond would be bad, and that whenever they got new owners, it was just going to be over. But it just continues to be gross. All right. So, Diamond Distribution. They got a new owner. Ad Populum, also part of their company. They're known as either Ad Populum or Sparkle Pop, depending on which angle you look at it from, depending on what they're distributing. But it's all one company, okay? So, Ad Populum Sparkle Pop sued Alliance Entertainment because they say that Alliance Entertainment violated an NDA when they were bidding on Diamond, and that they used that knowledge to poach several executives. And now Alliance Entertainment has responded. I know all these names are very confusing because we don't hear them every day. I hope I'm being clear. It's funny enough that it's worth following along, okay? So Alliance responded in a legal filing saying that Sparkle Pop engaged in a bunch of cost-cutting measures the second they took over Diamond, and that one cost-cutting measure was that Sparkle Pop refused to pay vendors unless their vendors would agree to huge discounts or extended payment terms. They were being jerks to everybody they owed money to. Mike Schimmel is a key figure here. Mike Schimmel was Diamond's former vice president of sales. As soon as Ad Populum Sparkle Pop took over, according to Schimmel, they asked him to take a 25% reduced salary. He was like, no, I'm not going to do that. No. And then they also told him to force their vendors to take smaller payments. And when he said, no, that's going to ruin our relationships long term that I've built for over 20 years, they fired him. Okay. So Schimmel said in this legal filing response to Alliance's lawsuit, he said under oath that Joel Weinshanker, the manager of Sparkle Pop, referred to asking him to tell vendors to take smaller payments. He called it playing chicken with idiots in referring to their vendors. He was like, I want you to tell them to take less of a payment or extended payment terms, or we're not going to work with them. And he called that, quote, playing chicken with idiots. That's how he looks at the comic book industry. Ay, ay, ay. That's the new owners of Diamond Distribution. What? That's crazy. That's just crazy. Is it true? I don't know. These are allegations, but they were allegations that Alliance was comfortable enough having Mike Schimmel say under oath. They've just whittled away a monopoly that they've had for 20 some years. They've whittled it away to nothing. I'm amazed at the value that this company has lost, and then new owners come in and they didn't increase the value. It seems like they decreased the value. Just amazing story. Let's go to something positive. This could potentially be very cool. A new digital comics, specifically reader app for comics and manga, place where you can buy this stuff. What is it? Neon Ichiban. That is the name of a new platform that has been created by David Steinberger and Chip Mosier. They're going to start selling digital comic books next month. I'll explain the background here. This has already signed up Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Distillery, of course. That'll be obvious. And Kodansha, of course. Oni, Vault. But, just getting Marvel and DC both off right off the bat. And they say that there's going to be more publishers named later. All right. So, Steinberger and Mosier, if you don't know, they're the founders of Distillery, which, by the way, Kodansha has an ownership stake in. That's why it's obvious that, of course, Distillery and Kodansha will be using this. Kodansha is a huge manga publisher, by the way. I would say Shueisha is likely the biggest, and Kodansha is probably the second biggest. I'd have to double check my work, but I'm pretty sure. But more importantly, more relevant to all of this, Steinberger was one of the co-founders of Comixology, and Mosier was the former head of content over there. He was the guy that brought in, say, the Scott Snyder originals, books like Night of the Ghoul and Dark Spaces Wildfire. And you got to remember, at one point, Comixology was a fantastic app. It had a really clean interface. It was easy to buy comics on it at one point, admittedly. But Comixology was acquired by Amazon in 2014. And it was obviously slowly whittled away. But what this must represent, is the end of a 10-year non-compete clause. That's super common in industries. Like if you sell something that you've created, they're going to say, okay, not only are we buying it, but you can't create a duplicate and compete directly against us. You've got to give us a 10-year window to establish the value in what we just acquired. Right? Yeah, people are like, Comixology still exists? It does. Maybe it's worth reminding people that Comixology used to be great. It is. It used to be really, really cool. Let's see. I hope there's space for smaller publishers like we had on Comixology. Exactly. That was a fantastic advantage of it. Distributing indie books to a huge audience. For Canadians, Comixology was the only way to buy for a long time. Comixology had a window where it was really, really good. It had a window. It was, and because you could get a lot of different publishers there, you could discover stuff, and it had a really good reading interface. It was priced fair. It was good. It was a good app for a while. I think that Amazon really botched it. Anyway, you can sign up early to get some sort of, it's mystery, exclusive digital stuff as an early adopter. neonichiban.com/ref/FVJKKC. Okay? But they're going to launch as early as next month. If you're in another country, if you just don't want to have the physical stuff cluttering your house for some reason, looks like this will be basically an app with the good interface the Comixology had. Plus, just to be clear, whatever they've been able to add to it in the last few years. Global Comics definitely has a good interface. I love that they added that hub with more content and stuff. But these are the guys that made Comixology good. So, yeah. It's a storefront. A storefront and a reader app. Comixology, I think, does technically exist, but it's super clunky. I think, well, you're right, because it got folded into Kindle, Amazon Kindle, but I think it still exists somewhere as a storefront within Amazon. but it's really a mess. Look, I don't know the details, but the timing is such that I go, oh my God, like they just all of a sudden launched this huge app with like all these big publishers all at once. I go, they must have had a 10-year non-compete clause, and all of a sudden they can do it. They must have. But it's just a guess. Kodansha is a bigger overall publisher, but I think Shueisha is bigger when counting manga only. Right. Good point. Because I was thinking of manga specifically, but I forgot. You're right, because Kodansha does a lot of magazines and I think even books. I think you're right. Hey, Chris, I'm thousands of feet in the air. He must be exercising. But rest easy. I'm coming down once I find the airport. Thanks for jumping in, Dave. Dave got to go to Heroes Con, and I'm jealous. That is a Comic Tropes referral link. I don't think I get anything for it, but yeah, they if you give your own link and people use it, you get bumped up into getting access to it sooner, is all. So you get your own referral link. I think it's got some potential. I did use Comixology for a little while. Comixology, and I will say that the stuff that Chip Mosier brought in with the originals, it was like right towards the end of when it was still usable, but they got some really good original books. They really did. I can put the referral link in the description when I end the show. I can't do it live. I should have thought ahead. Sorry. Or did I already put it in? Hold on. Did I put it in? Probably not, right? I'm just checking real quick. I did put it in the description. I did think ahead. It is in the description link below. If you want to just sign up. It doesn't obligate you to anything. CGC has created a comic vending machine. Well, a slabbed comic vending machine. I'm afraid I don't know who Ron Riget Jr. is. I'm afraid I'm not familiar. Sorry. What is this? It's a little fun. It's a little goofy. It's a little probably not a great value, but depends on how rich you are. So CGC announced that they've teamed up with Courtyard.io to offer people a virtual vending machine that gives slabbed and graded comics. Okay. $200 it costs to get a comic out of this vending machine. I think you get an animation. That's fun. And you'll get a random CGC graded comic. Only Marvel and DC, just to be clear. There are a total of 1,200 comics in the machine. First come, first served. Here's the odds of what you could get for that $200. 47% of people will get a comic that's valued between $100 to $150. Cool. You could lose money. Almost half the people will lose money. 22% of people will get a comic valued between $150 to $200. Ooh, you almost get your money's worth. Another 24% will get a book that's valued between $200 to $400. 6.2, $400 to $800. A measly 1.1% will get an $800 to $1,600 value comic. And 0.06% have a chance of getting a book that's valued between $1,600 to $3,200. They do show you how many are sort of left. If you go to their link, they show you, what's already been won. Because, of course, that's just going to whet your appetite. They're showing you all these cool older comics or high-graded comics. It's too bad it's virtual. I would tag the hell out of these machines with stickers and hijinks. This is a little bit gambling. Yeah, a little. It seems problematic to me. I don't disagree. Thanks, Shane. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for watching. I know it's late over there. Oh boy, Ravage 2099, graded 8.5. It's worth $80. I got my $200 worth. They do say that, like, if you don't like it, you can sell it back to them for 90% back. And then there's going to be sort of like a virtual marketplace that sells the books that were sold back. It's bonkers. This, on its surface, is just a mystery box gambling. Yeah. A blind bag, a blind box, mystery bag. Partnered with CGC is not helping themselves being directly involved. No, it is not like somebody else says, hey, we've got graded comics that you could win. This is CGC saying, like, it's our idea, and we've partnered with a virtual company to make this happen. I'll just say real quick, Bronze Age Nerd also has a channel. He and Big Me McFly, the comic book guy, do a weekly comic book show that starts at 8 p.m. Pacific, so a little after my show ends. They always have an interesting topic. They'll talk about some of the news items. They're both a little more knowledgeable on the collecting and the grading aspect of it. So if this interests you, these guys know that stuff a little more than me and might talk about it. And I will say that the best part for me of going to that summer con I was kvetching about was getting to see Big B and Bronze. And Bronze Age Nerd got to host 3 panels there with a bunch of different writers and artists. So I'm very happy for him. Great show. Ron Roget Jr. is an alternative cartoonist published by Fantagraphics. A large mirror fell on him and the shattered glass ruptured his Achilles. Ugh, gory. All right, yeah. So he's got a GoFundMe, folks. Let's see. Andy, at least pull tabs have a bar full of people to commiserate or cheer with. This is all just sadness all alone. West Coast Avengers also has a great show, and he's got an interview up now with Alice Darrow. She has been somebody that's worked on shows like Futurama and stuff. And she's got a new book coming out from Dark Horse. We've talked about it in the news, but it's been a few months, called Tramps of the Apocalypse, a comedy post-apocalyptic book. So, all right, back to the news. Dynamite has joined Lunar Distribution. So, yeah, Dynamite announced this week that they've left Diamond. They've signed up with Lunar. Starting with today's final order cutoff, that'll be books from them that arrive in stores July 9th and July 16th. I'm sure there'll be a few delays as they switch distributors. But overall, with what we see going on with Diamond, I just say good for you, Dynamite. Happy for you, I hope. I hope it doesn't cause too much chaos with, comic book retailers. I know that there's a bunch that still want to use just Diamond because it's what they're used to. I know that, or they're annoyed at how either Penguin or Lunar work. I sort of get that, but, you're leaving money on the table if you don't order books. This is how it is. Not quite spelled right, but kvetch is just Yiddish for complain, I guess. Not that I know that much, but yeah, I feel like a lot of us have taken a certain amount of Yiddish into our vocabulary, right? Call somebody a mensch if they're kind of a good person or something. I don't know. There's probably other words that aren't coming to me. I just use them here and there. Dave's from New York. He's a New York Jewish guy. He knows a bit of Yiddish. And when he uses it, it's not problematic like I do. No, a lot of it has just found its way into pop culture lexicon. So yeah, just saying kvetch. Right, klutz. That's a common one. A klutz, that's Yiddish. Boychik, yeah. Anyway, what else did I have to say about this? Just that's the last sizable publisher I can think of that has now left Diamond. Diamond now has no exclusive publishers of a certain size. The next big question mark, though, This is the sort of part that's sad and tricky, and it isn't for me to figure out, but I hope it does get figured out, is that what's going to happen to all the dozens, you could argue hundreds, of indie publishers that really only had Diamond as a distributor. Who do they go to? Because these, like Lunar and Penguin Random House, are not going to pick up smaller distributors. They're not built up enough to do that yet. You know, they're taking publishers of a certain size. They don't have the economy of scale to work with smaller publishers. Where do these guys go? You know, we've talked about some of the different plans that have been pitched. You know, you've got like Massive Indies, where Massive says, hey, you basically pay us a fee and we'll let you list yourself under us in like the Lunar catalog, things like that. It's tricky. Chutzpah. Yep. Oy vey. I think that like a lot of us say these things and don't always know where they come from, but they're Hebrew, or specifically Yiddish. Let's see. A plurality of distributors is a good thing long term. I agree with you, Daniel. Hopefully smaller publishers can find a way. That's my only concern at this point. You know, and if Diamond can come out of this and be functional, and maybe that becomes their niche for all we know. Maybe they can be a functional distributor, and maybe their niche is focusing on small press. I don't know. Somebody needs to, though. There is an audience for it. There's a market for it. Some of the best comics out there, or at least the ones with the most passion, which I think often translates to some of the best comics, are going to come from indie and small press. They just are. It's why I love looking carefully through Artist Alley at a comic convention. You can find such incredible stuff. I love small press cons. And it's one of the things I was really disappointed with, again, at the Washington Summer Con, is that they had people that make prints and crafts, but they really did not have a comic book Artist Alley anymore. And it was sad for me. Chutzpah. It would be pronounced more like chutzpah. Tuckus. I got this from John Munch. Yeah. Geez, I try to keep up. I don't know what happened with their Gargoyles Kickstarter that makes it called botched. I have to admit, I just have no idea at all what that is. Is Archie still primarily through Diamond? I thought that because some people still use Diamond, but they're not exclusive to Diamond. I thought Archie, let me look it up real fast, folks. Because I would like to know. Archie Comics Distributor. Archie did sign a deal with Lunar at the beginning of this year. So Archie is with Lunar and Diamond, just to be clear. You got it. There's always a delay, but I'm sure that you beat me. All right, what other news do we have? We've got cool news tonight. Trust me, there's cool news. But I did want to point this out. I love when comics and charity can work hand in hand. There's plenty of cool programs. One of the ones that I like are Humble Bundle. I've gotten some Humble Bundle deals before. It is digital comics, but you pay what you want. A portion of that money goes to charity, and you get a ton of digital comics. There are two deals on it that I wanted to point out that I thought were worth looking into. It's where I got basically the entire ElfQuest collection by the Peonies. Very cool. So IDW has a group of 23 books you can get. It includes stuff like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I've talked this one up a bunch. Scott Snyder, Hayden Sherman. Hayden Sherman's become a hugely popular artist with Absolute Wonder Woman. But you want to see them work together? Dark Spaces Wildfire. Great crime comic about criminals on a work release prison plan to fight fires. and they try to rob a house that's in the fire's path. Great heist book. I liked it anyway. Anyway, so a bunch of books. That benefits the charity Heroes Initiative, and that helps comic book creators that have trouble with living and medical expenses. Russ Heath, very famous comic book artist, was definitely helped by them in a big way back in the day. So anyway, there's that one, which I think looks cool. Also, Dynamite has 49 of their Disney licensed books. So depending on how passionate about that stuff you are, you can get, Gargoyles, Darkwing Duck, Lilo and Stitch. That benefits an interesting charity called First Book. And First Book provides educational materials to kids in need. Both good causes. Just thought I'd put it out there. You basically donate what you think is fair, and you can get like a bunch of comics. So, yeah. Humble Bundle really helped me build out my DRM-free digital comics collection, particularly when it comes to Godzilla and Doctor Who books. It's worth checking out every once in a while. It's worth checking out because you could catch up on some stuff that you've seen recommended. You don't have to necessarily pay what cover price is, but you could know that whatever you're donating, a big chunk of that is going to go to, World Kitchen or Hero Initiative. Good causes. Good causes. There's a setting in Humble. This is important. Thank you, David, for speaking up about this. I almost forgot to say this. Where you can change the ration of money going to the charity. Look for the adjust donation on the right side of the page. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you pay and how much of that goes to charity. Thank you very much for speaking up and reminding me about that, David. Yes. So, right. Excuse me. I completely forgot, but there is an Usagi Yojimbo bundle going on right now. I forgot. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't want to mention it like every week or every month, but I do think Humble Bundle is a cool way to get caught up in some comics for a good price and knowing that the price is going to what you want it to. The Gargoyles Kickstarter stated that they would ship out the rewards by July of 24. Last update was on June 8th of this year, and they said they're still working on printing. I mean, I understand the frustration there. I will just say that I think that when you deal with comics on Kickstarter, delays are super common. Don't get me wrong. There are some creators out there that are fantastic about fulfilling consistently and on time. And I'll point to my friend that was in the chat today, Randy Stone. He's up in Canada. He's got a small imprint called Altruist Comics. He always fulfills his Kickstarters quickly, pays his talent, super professional. But I really don't think that that's exclusive to Dynamite, especially when you deal with all the different licensing restrictions that they're probably dealing with behind the scenes with Disney. I would be frustrated too if it took me a long time to get what I paid for. I would. But I'd say that delays are pretty unfortunately common with crowdfunded comics. That's I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just saying I think it's the way it is. That's all I'm saying. Wow. That is a lot of Usagi comics. That's really cool. Jim Mafood. Look, am I biased because he's a friend? Yes. But it's also a fact that Jim did a great job getting his comic out in a very timely manner. He did a great job on communication there. And I can't wait to see his next campaign go live. And hopefully I can do something to help promote it. Arachnid Enforcer. And I still want to do one myself. And I take it very seriously. I do want to do one myself. Heavy Metal had their magazine out in stores before Kickstarter, but they made up for it. Yeah, that was a botch, but it seems like they have made things right with their supporters by giving them a bunch of extras. And but that probably cost them. That was probably a pricey mistake on their end. I think I just go in when I do support a crowdfunded comic, which I have done many times. I do always sort of just say, I'm supporting this because I like the idea or I like the creators, but personally, I'm not counting on it arriving at a certain point. I'll get it when I get it and hope for the best. I've only had like one comic book Kickstarter project, and it was a long time ago, like just not fulfill. I've had pretty good luck. Captain Kirk is coming back to life, but specifically in the comics. So I thought that this could be fun to talk about. I like Star Trek. I'm not as knowledgeable about the trivia and minutia as everybody, but there are some shows that I've seen all of Deep Space Nine, and I really like Strange New Worlds. Maybe that makes me a weirdo, but I like Star Trek. Certainly seen all the movies. IDW Publishing announced Star Trek: The Last Starship, or as William Shatner himself joked on social media this week, the LA Starship. But anyway, The Last Starship, it's part of its very successful Star Trek line of comics, and it's going to bring Captain Kirk back from the dead. So it is set for September. It's written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, pretty popular duo. Artist Adrian Bonilla. I'm not familiar, I will admit. But Kelly and Lansing did get an Eisner nomination for their Star Trek comics as Best New Series back in 2023. That's kind of a big deal. I'll just throw that out there. Strange New Worlds is good. I know, I like it so much. Kickstarter thing is no joke, but super rewarding if you can pull it off. You did a good job, Jim. You really did. Oh, and you know what? Let me just mention this real fast. Last week, we had Jim's buddy Sean Crystal on. He's got his book, Ink Pulp, the anti-AI art book. And Sean just announced that Jim and Matteo Scalera are both contributing, giving bonuses. Now, if you support Cyan, you will get a PDF preview of Jim's next book, Arachnid Enforcer, and you'll get an issue 0 comic by Matteo. So pretty nice. I love how they support each other, but it's added value to Cyan, the Ink Pulp book. I recommend it. I've already backed it. I've never read any Star Trek novels. No. I guess I just haven't gone quite that far. But I do like Star Trek. I do. Let me go into this a little, because it talks about something. Let's see. What's the name of the anti-AI? Oh, Cyan. If you put in Cyan or Ink Pulp, you'll definitely find it. Ink Pulp or Sean Crystal, you'll find it on Kickstarter. So anyway, so these guys are writing this book. They say that the story is going to be accessible to either fans or new readers. They say that their goal is, to make it accessible, and that it will be a dark adventure. Now, it does take place during a specific time in Star Trek history that hasn't been explored, but has been referred to. And that is called, Loudmouth is talking. It's called The Burn. It was something that was talked about on the show Star Trek Discovery. And it's a galaxy-wide disaster where all at once, every starship by any civilization, anybody that has warp drive to go faster than light and go to other planets, every warp core exploded all at once, destroying, decimating interstellar travel. Unless you could create a new ship or something like that. It killed trillions, they said. It shattered the peace and stability of the United Federation of Planets. It takes place way past stuff like Next Generation. It's several generations past. Anyway, facing a true Wild West in space, a mysteriously resurrected Kirk will need to lead a new crew and ship in a seemingly impossible effort to uphold Starfleet's mission of unity across the cosmos. It'll make it basically much closer to what he had to do when the Enterprise was, one of the first starships that was being sent out into space to meet these civilizations. He's reuniting civilizations, encountering new ones. It's a time when there is not lots of interstellar travel. So that could be fun. That could be cool. As to how he comes back, who knows? But I will say season 3 of Picard did set up that there could be a way to bring him back. I don't know if they'll touch on that or not. I've heard that there's some really good Star Trek novels, including I've always heard that Peter David, the recently passed Peter David, wrote some of the all-time best ones that people say are really, really good. Yes, I've talked about Neon Ichiban. Neon Ichiban. There is a link in the description below if you want to like sign up for it. It's going to launch next month. It's going to be a hub for buying digital comics, but there's a lot more to it anyway. I know that like not everybody knows Star Trek, but if everybody's at least heard of Kirk, this is taking place in a cool era that hasn't been explored too much, where basically it's super hard to travel. Interstellar stuff, it could be a cool intro point to Star Trek through comics. Could be cool. Oh, weird. Okay. Kirkman and Finch. Let's talk about this. Image Comics and Skybound announced an 8-issue series. It's going to team up Robert Kirkman with artist David Finch. Launches in September 24th. Here's the premise, this little part in the middle. Enor has led his tribe for many seasons, but his time as chieftain is coming to an end. He wields the mighty Skinbreaker, but at his age, he can barely lift it. Will Enor's reluctant heir, Enoch, take over before their world falls to ruin? As a bloody power struggle begins, an even bigger threat lurks in the darkness beyond their village. And it's going to have a bunch of variant covers, of course. They'll also have a 10-inch by 14-inch Treasury edition if you want to look at like David Finch's art basically at regular scale that he draws at. I did want to say one thing I thought was cool. One of the variant covers is by Tony Moore. So let me just pause real quick to say, like, aside from the book, I just want to say Tony and Robert are friends of mine that I've known forever, but they were friends in 7th grade, and together they made comics together. You know, they started with Battle Pope and built all the way to Walking Dead. And obviously they went their separate ways at a certain point. Tony did come back to do a variant cover for a big anniversary issue of Walking Dead. And more recently, just like last month, he did he's doing a new cover for a Battle Pope compendium. And now he's doing a variant cover for Robert's book Skinbreaker. I want to say that he's doing one for another book that they're doing, like another Skybound book. I don't remember off the top, but it's lovely to see that they are at least talking on this level. I don't know how much they talk or whether it's business. It gives me a small bit of hope that maybe someday they could reunite for at least a short story or something. Because I'll be honest, guys. Am I biased? Yes. But I think they bring out the best in each other. I really do. I think that they've created some hilarious and exciting comics together. And just seeing that he's doing a variant cover on this got me excited. But also, yeah, very different type of story. I feel like, Skinbreaker reminds me of a time when, like, Golden Age comics, when you had comics by guys like Hal Foster and Frank Frazetta and stuff, and you would have Tarzan, and you would have eventually, like Conan, but you'd have like Tor by, Joe Kubert. You had these sort of barbarian characters and stuff like that. And it feels like it's been a while since we've had anything close to, a good Tarzan type knockoff. And this feels like that's the kind of book it's emulating. I think it's a cool idea. Yeah, exactly. An adventure series. A lot of people love each of these creators. I think it's cool to see them working together. Battle Pope's really funny. Battle Pope's super funny. It's a comedy book more than anything else, just to be clear. I like it. That's how I met them. It was like their first Battle Pope book. So I wanted to mention that. I'm excited for it. Another Skybound book is this one by the Laphams, Good is Dead. I'll read anything by David and Maria Lapham. Stray Bullets made me a loyal fan for life. Stray Bullets. If you can get that Uber Al's compendium of the full run of Stray Bullets. Trust me, one of the best crime comics ever. So Image and Skybound also announced the new crime comic Good is Dead for September 17th. Each issue is going to be double-sized. So it's more than a 22-page story. It's something like 44 to 45. The story is by the Eisner-winning creators, obviously the Laphams. Also co-creators Chris Black, who's the creator and showrunner of that show, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. He did that with a comic book creator. Who was the other co-showrunner on that one, folks? Help me out. Was it Matt Fraction? I think it was Matt Fraction also worked on that show. And David Alpert. David Alpert works at Skybound as like an executive on most of their TV and film properties. It was Fraction, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. Anyway, but it's the Laphams, you know, that's what sells me. Here's what they describe as the plot. Here's what we can know about it. The Emissary Bridge has always connected the citizens of Port Linden to hope and opportunity. But when one man shockingly sets himself on fire, I guess that's what this is referring to, the bridge now brings something else to town, certain death. As the town's lead lawman, Sheriff David Calhoun will need to stay one step ahead of the forces looking to take his town apart. If he has any chance of bringing the truth to light, he'll need to expose generations of secrets while outrunning death itself. Sounds to me like it's mixing supernatural with crime fiction. So, could be good, but trust me, if you don't know about these folks, the best place to start, just trust me on this one, buy Stray Bullets. It is epic. It is epic. That's an interesting idea. Maybe that is so. Do any of the... Yeah. Huh. I hadn't really considered that, but that sounds kind of likely, actually. That's an interesting idea. I don't know. Speaking of like bridges and communities, I'll just mention real fast that I saw 28 Years Later, and I thought it was great. And I'll tell you that it was unexpected because it does not try to repeat really anything from 28 Days Later. It just takes place in the same world, tells a very different story. I thought it went in some very interesting directions, had some well-defined, nuanced characters. Yeah, really cool movie. Really cool. I would recommend it. All right, going back. Two more pieces of news. This one just cracked me up, folks. What are you looking at? I'll explain it in a minute, but this is marketing for Demon Slayer. Very popular manga. I think it's hilarious. The upcoming Japanese release of Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, that's an anime movie based on the hit manga, has a unique marketing hook, a 28,000 square meter rice field shaped to look like protagonist Tanjiro. The titular Demon Slayer himself. 28,000. This isn't even the whole thing, by the way. There's a whole nother part of the rice paddy or the rice fields that has, you know, like the logo on it and stuff. This is that is a huge amount of space if you don't know. 28,000 square meters. Gyoda City in the Saitama prefecture has put together this paddy rice field that resembles the hero. By the way, this is likely to beat a Guinness World Record, as the previous rice paddy artwork was 27,000 square meters, also made in Gyoda City. So they're beating their own record. That was for some Japanese RPG that they were promoting at one point. But yeah, so like they've found a way to plant and shape and grow the rice to make this humongous thing that you can really only see from a helicopter. There's no other way other than these. So it's just sort of funny to me because I'm like, you could drive by this, you wouldn't be able to see any of it. There's no like skyscrapers or anything near here to get a good view. You can only rely on the fact that like, yeah, planes are going over, or maybe a drone or something like that. It's creative. I like it. Crop circle aliens are getting creative. There you go. Japanese comic publishers do not joke when it comes to advertising. Can you imagine if like Marvel or DC spent money on this? Like, you don't even see Marvel or DC hire a skywriter at the San Diego Comic-Con. That's something I've like thought, like, you know, that's an affordable way to promote yourself. Like, I could just have a skywriter literally just write comic tropes in the sky at San Diego Comic-Con or fly by with a banner. It's totally affordable, but they don't even do that. A+ advertising, I know. It's so cool. I saw a girl wearing a Demon Slayer t-shirt at church. I told her, thank you for your service. It's different, right? It's, yeah, wild but impressive. Cool. Anyway, I just got a kick out of it. Last piece of news is also cool, and that's that there's a new Mike Mignola graphic novel coming. That is always reason to celebrate. So, Mignola is expanding his Lands Unknown universe. He had just released this, was it earlier this year? Maybe it was late last year, actually, now that I think of it. Bowling with Corpses, which is, of course, you know, it's not radically different from what Hellboy does. Is it adapts mythology from around the world into new supernatural stories. It just doesn't have Hellboy in it, but it's that kind of idea of taking real mythology, making new stories with it. So anyway, this is his next graphic novel, Uri Tupka and the Gods. That comes out February 2026. And apparently there's going to be a sequel to this called Uri Tupka and the Devils. But first we'll deal with this. Dark Horse, of course, is the publisher. It's going to be written and drawn by Mignola. Anytime Mike is willing to draw the story, I am there. Colors by Dave Stewart. What a team. Mignola says about this, quote, "This is the first of 2 books tracing the life of Uri Tupka, former doctor of theology, but now a heretic, on the run as he looks for the truth about the gods. See Uri barely escape one disaster after another. Pirates, bandits, witches, and demons, giants, and monsters. There is also a talking cat and a queen of the vegetables, because, of course, why wouldn't there be?" That is Mignola for you. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm in. Good idea. Yeah, I'll have the skywriter say, hey, Feige, comic tropes for Paste Pop Pete. A talking cat is the piece that sold you. Yeah, I agree. Mignola never he never disappoints. He never really disappoints. You might like something he does way more than another thing, but what has he ever done where you're just like, nah? For me, never. I've never there are some creators where I've never been disappointed by what they've done. As far as like modern creators, you know, like Ed Brubaker or Frank Quitely, Mike Mignola, these are all people that no matter what, I always like the end result. I might like some stuff more than others, but I always like it. Mignola really is a king. I think what I admire about Mike Mignola, beyond liking his style and his ideas, is that he, and you can see this, by the way, in the documentary about him. It's called something like Making Monsters. It's free on YouTube in North America. You might have to use a VPN other places, but he talks about how he never was super excited about drawing things like cars and stuff like that, you know, but he loves comics and he loves drawing. And he was like, I want to create comics where I get to draw what I like to draw, crumbling castles and skeletons and monsters and stuff, but also big Jack Kirby-esque action and stuff. And he created his own career path. You know, he created the comics that he wanted to make, and he's made that successful. And I love that. I love that when somebody takes control of their own career path. They're not just doing work for hire, right? It's having a very, very much an intentionality of where you want to go. And that can be hard to figure out sometimes. Not everybody not everybody, even if they're like really good at either writing or drawing, can necessarily also know where they want to push their own career. Not everybody's going to know that, but sometimes you do, and I really admire it. I really do. And I'm happy for him. Mignola took my parking space once. Well, we can't all be perfect, right? Yes, that's what it was called, Drawing Monsters. I had supported that one on Kickstarter, felt like that was great. I'm happy that that is now available for all on YouTube. So yeah. Let's talk about some of the comics that came out this week. Give me a moment to set up my extra camera here. It's a little harder than it used to be because my shoulder still has very little, what do you call it? Like very little strength and flexibility. So I'm actually going to have to stand up here and adjust some things. And I'll be right back with everybody as the host. Just a part of the show where I have to reset some of my, I don't know, setup. Sounds very redundant and repetitive. Sorry. Just zooming in and focusing. But there are a lot of cool comics this week, that's for sure. There, that looks nice. Thank you for being with me while I do this. Add an extra camera. By the way, I always add chapters once I finish this show. I go back and edit the description to add chapters so that people can jump to the topic that interests them most. Just in case you're ever not here for like a live show and you're like, oh, I'd love to skip Chris doing all this fiddling or fussing, or this topic doesn't interest me, or this review, I'm worried about getting spoiled on something. You can always, jump to the next chapter. I'm going to set it up like this. I don't know about that. I don't know if it's any good or not. No. I did too many devil salutes. All right. Well, I'll just talk about this one since it's on top, I suppose. But Battle Beast has engaged me more than I thought it would. And I do like books like, say, Conan. The Jim Zub run right now is really strong. I like warrior books, but not all the time. Not all the time. And for this one, it was really hard. You know, I'm going, wait, is it flipping the image? Hold on 2 seconds. Is it flipping the image? Are you guys seeing that? Let me see if I can adjust that. Oh, it's not flipping it? Okay, it is for me. It is for me in my preview window. Sorry for the confusion. Okay. I can't pull it up right now, but if you go to one of my previous episodes on this channel where I'm either doing a PO box unboxing or like having people promote their book, it's always in the description. Okay, thanks everybody. I lost my path there. But anyway, so this is about a warrior. And it's about a warrior who's like 20 steps beyond somebody like Worf from Star Trek, where, you know, he's more than a Viking, where, you know, but it's taking that concept of, I want to die in battle. That's the only way I know to prove my own worth. Although there's something more to Battle Beast that we're slowly learning. He says that he just he can't be beaten. He's like the toughest. He left his home planet so that he wouldn't cause it ruin, because he just knows that his thirst for violence is too much. But now he really kind of wants to have it end. And he only wants it to end with somebody that can beat him in battle. But you realize that there's something a little bit more going on behind the scenes. And it's some of the more clever subtext I've gotten from a Robert Kirkman story. I feel like he can often have his characters speak a little too literally about what's going on in their head. There's not always nuance. When he does humor, I feel like he's able to differentiate voices a little bit more. And when he does action and adventure, he sometimes has his characters speak a little too directly of like exactly what's going on in their mind, and not like talk like a real person does. It's a subtle thing that maybe I've just read too much Kirkman, and then that's just what I get out of it. But I feel like there's some subtext to Battle Beast where he's got some trauma going on. He's got some depression and anxiety, and that he's not being upfront about what he really wants or what he really needs. He's got this little sidekick essentially that, you know, he's very grudgingly taking around because his sidekick's like, I can take you to, you know, this big threat that I know about that could be your ultimate battle. But in this issue, the sole short-term mission is let's get this little sidekick guy a new body because he's got like a ruined body. Okay. How does he get that? He goes to a battle station where they have fights, and he's like, yeah, you know, I'm going to win a fight. They do have a gag here with, there's always been sort of a knockoff Star Trek The Next Generation crew going around in space in the Invincible books. So here's Riker, or their version of Riker, hitting on like an alien that would not to any of us be conventionally attractive. And he's like, oh, you know, hey baby, don't worry. You know, I'm going to, alien genitalia is my specialty. So that's a bit of like the Kirkman sense of humor. I think that there's some like nuance to Battle Beast's personality that I appreciate. And here's the thing. Artist Ryan Ottley has said he likes the ideas that Robert puts out and that he brings out the best in him. And I'd be hard pressed to disagree when you get like action scenes like this. Look at the energy of that. That reads very clearly, but boy, there's some great energy to it. It's really fun. It's more fun than I expected. I agree with you here too. Yes, the ship on this book is an artificial intelligence that also wants to kill Battle Beast. It's an interesting dynamic. Otley is a beast. So there's a good mix in this of action, humor, but also beyond like the world building and the plots and stuff like that. I think that I get a little bit of just a little bit more personality to Battle Beast than I expected. I really didn't expect there to be much depth, but I think that for this book to succeed, there's going to have to be. You know, it was okay if he was a little more of a one-note warrior as a very occasional supporting character in Invincible. But if he's going to be the protagonist, we have to learn a little bit more about him to make him a real character. We have to. Let's see. Word of mouth did a lot of Battle Beast sales in my area. The store owner said the day after the Comics Explained did a video on the book, there was a line when the store opened the next day. That's interesting. I always sort of wondered about that, whether those explainer channels added or took away from people reading comics. But I'm starting to think that they do bring in readers. I'm starting to come around a little to understanding that while it doesn't interest me too much to just recap stories, it might bring in new readers that actually buy. I like that. Oh my God. Robert, this is a good idea because I know Robert watches all my shows. He just can't get enough. A t-shirt that says alien genitalia is my specialty. You're leaving money on the table if you don't print that up. That is the Battle Beast t-shirt that you should make. Not like one of these variant covers. Alien genitalia is my specialty. What else? Oh, you know what? I wasn't planning on going from that to this, but I will say that, you know, Bug Wars is also about, you know, a warrior, but this is a much more unlikely warrior. It's about a human guy that's been shrunk down to insect size, and beyond there being insects, there are these different. They're all called mites, but they're human-esque factions that ride all these, you know, spiders and bees and what else, ants and stuff like that, and they all battle each other. And this kid has a supernatural device that gives him the power to to have human strength at a tiny size, so he can beat them up. But he doesn't understand how it works completely. There's a lot of interesting world building in this. Strange stuff happens. At the same time, at first, I was reading through this going, I think I might be ready to move on from this book. You know, I think I get where it's going. And about halfway through, all of a sudden I started going, you know what? I didn't expect it, but all the world building is just starting to pay off. You know, all these weirdos and stuff are becoming more and more interesting to me. I kind of like where it's going, and I love the Mahmoud Asrar artwork, especially when there's like, you know, big gory fights and stuff like that. I think that this was the moment when it really turned. There's just this small plot point here where all the mites, you know, all the bug people are trying to get the device that Slade, his name is Slade, that try to get that device. And he goes, you've all been going for this, like acting like you wanted to protect yourself from humans stepping on you or, you know, mowing your lawns and killing you. And he goes, I don't think that's it. He goes, if you ever organized, there's way more bugs in the world than there are people. And if like they were organized or something, bugs would destroy the world so quickly if they wanted to. You know, if they had that intention, they could. But I think that this device exists for me to keep you guys from doing that. And so that's like a little bit of a shift from what we thought that the device was for. Like we thought that this was a device created by the bugs to protect themselves. And that was an interesting idea where he's like, no, he goes, I think that, like, you know, I'm going to keep it. And my job is more to protect humanity from you weirdos. And I go, okay, you've added a new wrinkle to the story that I didn't see coming. And I'm interested now. There is one more issue left. I guess I didn't realize that it was a 6-issue series, but if it is, I think that that's the right amount of time. I think it's paced well for this to wrap up. It's worth reading just for the art alone. It really is. But it's got enough world building and character work that's kept me hooked this long. So I will finish this one out. I was just about to give up on it, but then this issue like really brought me back in a big way. So I would just say that I was not expecting all the places this story took me. And if a story can surprise me these days, comics, TV, movies, that carries so much weight. There are two things that I like in a story. One, to feel an emotion. That could be anger, sadness, laughter. But if it can genuinely bring that emotion out of me, I feel that's a success. I'm always impressed that a story can bring an emotion to the surface like that. Not every book is going to do that in a big way, but every once in a while it does. But the second thing it can do is just surprise me. And not surprise me with just like total nonsense turns. Just twists that I'm like, okay, that's a fair story beat that I didn't see coming. I've been reading stories long enough and studying the structure of them that I can predict a lot of movies and TV shows. You know, somebody will like have like something subtle, and I'll go to Chrissy, you know, like, oh, that character is probably going to have a miscarriage like a few episodes down the road. And she's like, what? Like, why do you think that? And I'm like, oh, you know, it's just the way that they presented like how delicate her pregnancy was instead of just saying that she's pregnant. You know, little things like that. I just like go like, okay, you have to set certain things up in the first act. Or like if there's a murder mystery and like there's somebody that they're putting a lot of attention on that came in later to the story, I'm like, nah, they weren't introduced in the first act. It has to be somebody from the first act if they're going to play fair. Anyway, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying that like a lot of stuff that I watch, and it doesn't even ruin the experience, but sometimes I'm like, I know where a bit of this is going. If I really think about it, I can figure out the structure. It's the only way it's going to play fair. This one surprised me a little, and I like that. Here's one that I was surprised that I didn't like as much as I expected to, because I've really been enjoying a lot of the Wonder Woman run. by Tom King. And usually Daniel Sampari, who at least did the cover here. But we've got a fill-in artist inside and a flashback to, I guess, when Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor first met, or like first had their first night together. And then afterwards, she has to go to DC to battle a bunch of giant rats. I don't know. I already sort of know that they love each other. So like their relationship and talking about like the night before is sort of interesting, but kind of redundant. And I thought that this new villain like could have been funny, but instead he was just kind of boring to me. So out of a run that I've really enjoyed, I just say I didn't love this. And it looks like this is like part 1 of 2. So like there's another issue with more of it. And I just don't really need that. It just didn't give me enough new stuff about Wonder Woman. I already got it drilled into my head through this run how perfect Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor are for each other. I just didn't need this second conversation. Yeah. I read the first 2 Assorted Crisis events, and then I fell behind. But if it's getting really good reviews, I might pick that back up in trade paperback. I liked the first issue a lot. I didn't care about the second issue as much, so I was being kind of like ruthless. The second issue made you cry, you say? Okay. Let's see. Reading so many comics, I guess the ending to Unbreakable. But I'm ecstatic when I'm wrong with plot points, like, say, the movie Sinners. Yeah, Sinners was another one where it was like an original idea, and I didn't really know where it was going, and I liked that surprise. What else should I talk about next? We've got Aliens versus Avengers concluding. We've got the one-shot Godzilla versus Avengers, specifically the new Avengers team when Bendis was writing. Got the latest issue of Ultimates. We've got the latest issue of Exquisite Corpses. G.I. Joe, Blood and Thunder. Tell you what, like some of these comics, I think you're probably either in or you're not. Like G.I. Joe, I love. I like the Energon Universe version, but I don't have a lot to say. Yeah, I hope you like it, but I like it a lot. I think Josh Williamson is making it interesting. I said I wasn't going to say something. I've got one thing to say. Okay, hold on. I'm seeing a little interest in AVA. There's 2 things I really like in this issue. One, the little subtle bits of the Transformers being worked in, like Destro and Cobra Commander are watching the battle, that the big obvious battle that like the Transformers are having in the Transformers book, and like talking about the implications of that technology and stuff, as well as Clutch has made an ally with Hound, who's sort of disguising himself as an army vehicle. But one thing I really like is this. Baroness and Covergirl are getting some downtime. They're in Paris. And all these Falcons start attacking them, right? And who is it? It's Raptor. In the original toy, Raptor was the biggest dork. He was, G.I. Joe started as a very realistic military group, and they had specialties. And yeah, Cobra was the bad guys, and they'd have like a little bit weird, right? Like Destro has a metal face. That's a little weird, but it's like, it's still believable enough, right? And then at some point they introduced Raptor, who like just wore a falcon head and had like these wings, but he couldn't fly or anything. And he was a former accountant. I was like, what a dumb toy. What a dumb character. So I didn't think I'd have any interest in him. Joshua Williamson has reimagined Raptor. First of all, he's got actual sort of, like technologically advanced wings, so he can actually fly. Okay, that's interesting. And second, he's a tracker. He's not just like a businessman that dresses as a falcon because he's weird. He's a tracker, and Major Blood has hired him to track down Baroness because he wants revenge. Okay, I gotta admit, that's a little more interesting. Seeing this guy with like, you know, his fake talons, but like, you know, these wings, and he's trained all these birds. I go, in a world where actual transforming robots exist, I can buy into this slightly elevated take on a villain and find him plausible enough to be a threat. And I didn't think I'd ever think that about Raptor. But I should have given writer Joshua Williamson credit, because he's the guy that's made me think that Cobra Law, this secret society of serpent people, has potential use. He can do more than taxes now. Baroness did shoot out Major Blood's eye. He now walks around with an eye patch, and he wants revenge on Baroness. Anyway, I didn't expect it. It was good. This is a week about all sorts of unexpected stuff. I did expect more. I expected good stuff out of Blood and Thunder. I'm biased. Benito Cerino's been a friend for a long time. I sort of know EJ Sue, and I've always loved his artwork. Always. I've been reading EJ's stuff since, you know, he started doing comics. So I did expect this to be fun, and it was. Blood and Thunder is set in the future, and it deals with a bounty hunter, and it has all sorts of funny commentary on society, because it's not a one-for-one parody of anything when you go super far into the future and you have sci-fi stuff. We get a little bit of her past. We get a little bit of world building with, like, you know, really egocentric jerks, really rich people. And we get a new villain, a prisoner who does not care about money at all, and he targets really wealthy people. And he just sort of he just monologues about their hypocrisy and is brutal, and nobody can stop him. Like the military police can do nothing to slow this guy down. Maybe our hero can. Look at this great 2-page spread of him rampaging. Beyond just being a cool design, this is a really fun here. I'll switch just so that you can see a little bit of it, because I'm trying to sell this to you. I promise it's funny and it's badass. It's funny and badass. Okay? It's good. It's good. I like that there's some people in a bank that are hiding, and they're like, well, they're saying that, like, this guy's targeting banks, but what are the odds he'd come into ours? You know, there's dozens and dozens of banks. We're probably going to be fine. And this person's like, yeah, but that's probably what people in every bank are thinking right now. And of course, that's the one that he breaks into. Trust me. Yes, it has futuristic action and adventure. The art is fantastic. The designs for aliens are innovative and cool, but it's also funny. It is funny. I really recommend Blood and Thunder. I think it's a pretty badass comic. Yeah, strong recommend. Read through this so fast, which is always a good sign. I'm like, yep, I like that one. I blasted through it. Awesome. Double salute. I can't quite get my second arm up properly. Have you seen Visiting Hours with Michael Ironside, where it's an 80s slasher movie where the killer is killing old people in an old folks' home? No. Thanks for the heads up. I don't know about that one. The latest bad horror movie I saw was most of Cutting Class, an early Brad Pitt movie, 1989. He's a high school student. It's like somebody's killing basically the teachers. It was garbage. It was garbage. It was funny. Let's see here. I'll go back to a book that I really, really liked. Okay. 4 issues of Aliens versus Avengers. And by the way, they call it Avengers. It's really just a bunch of Marvel superheroes, but AVA reads better. So that's fine. A satisfying end to this. A really good job of blending alien mythology with Marvel mythology. And specifically in this, Mr. Sinister, who's always playing with genetics. You know, he made himself a mutant. He's made himself like a clone. And now he has intentionally infected himself with an alien to become like an evolved form of the xenomorph. And all these Sinisters sort of think that it's going to like work with them, and it just destroys all the Sinisters. It just becomes an alpha of the alien race that's destroying the entire universe. So this is a very last stand where it's hard to call them the Avengers, but you know, we'll at least say Captain Marvel, Miles Morales, Wolverine, Emma Frost, and Black Panther go up against them in a final stand for humanity. Hardly any humans or aliens left, to be honest. Hardly any left. It's hard to go after this sinister version of an alien because he also has spliced in abilities like he can teleport like Nightcrawler. How can you possibly defeat him? Up till now, the few mutants that have survived include Armor. Makes sense. She's got like that armor. Emma Frost, she can go diamond form, not get bitten. And Wolverine because of his healing factor. But as soon as you've got one that can teleport, a lot of that goes out the window. All I can say is it ends in a very satisfying way. It is a dark story. But it becomes something where they leave the door open for future stories that could affect either the multiverse or the main Marvel universe if they wanted to. It could just be this one. But yeah, it's a good final showdown with humanity's last bits and this just massive wave of alien xenomorphs that have taken over planets throughout the galaxy. It's on a scale that you can barely imagine. I'm glad you liked it. I liked it too. It's dark, but it's cool. It's really cool. I have seen Tiptoes. It's horrible. Horrible. I'm a sucker for alien crossovers. A lot of them are surprisingly good. I'll just say real quick some of my recommendations for good alien crossovers in other media. Certainly, you have to say at the very top, Alien versus Predator. Dark Horse Comics really expanded what each of those franchises could be with that very simple idea, which it looks like could even extend into the upcoming Predator Badlands movie. We'll see. But that's one of the best alien crossovers. I would say Alien Superman is quite good. I would say Alien Wildstorm is good. Really changed Stormwatch into authority when you think about it. Alien Avengers is up there, like one of their better crossovers. Really, really cool. Couldn't really tell you whether they've got 52 or more. I think that they've got basically infinite now. Yeah, Alien, I think, has benefited from some pretty cool crossovers overall. I never played those, the Alien versus Predator video games. My sister and I did have some game consoles, but we tended to get them like right towards the end of their life. Like we had a Nintendo, and I want to say that like our parents got it for us in like the last year or two, maybe the last year before all of a sudden there was the Super Nintendo and Genesis and stuff. So we didn't grow up playing tons of video games. We played video games, but not tons. Alien versus Dusty Rhodes. I hope that's good. The Alien Earth TV show. I think Noah Hawley has made some great TV. I think Legion and Fargo are great TV, and he's the guy behind Alien Earth. But I don't quite know where it will go or what it is. I don't quite understand. The Superman, Alien, Batman, Predator is not really my favorite. I made an episode about it on Comic Tropes. I think it gets a little goofy, but that's okay. Have they ever done a crossover adaptation for TV or film? Well, they made 2 Alien Predator movies. I would say the first one is kind of fun. The second one is hot garbage. Let's see. They were your video games, and I wasn't allowed to play without asking. No, that's not entirely true, Gene. We had the Atari, and you had like a couple games on that, and I don't think I was ever very possessive of that one. The Nintendo was, I guess, technically mine, but I just feel like I remember you playing a good amount of Tetris at one point anyway. I don't think we played it that much, to be honest, compared to other friends of ours that we had. Yeah, I've said that before. You can barely see Alien versus Predator Requiem. It is filmed literally too dark. Right? Yeah, Wildcats Aliens is, you don't see where it's going. It's such a surprise. So, yeah, quite a good book. 4 issues is, I will say this, it's expensive, but it's also thicker than most comics. It's longer, and it's good. It's a good story. Now that it's finished, if you didn't read it yet, I'd say that you could probably get a better value and, a more fun reading experience getting it as a trade. I have talked up Exquisite Corpses from reading the Ash Can to reading issue 1. Premise is awesome. Original 13 colonies are supposedly all run by super rich assholes that control our country secretly, okay? And every several years, they have a representative fight on their behalf. They take over a town. They close it off. They put all their killers in the town. Whatever collateral damage there is, they don't care. And whoever wins gets to be the controlling person for like 5 years or whatever. It's time for a battle. But basically what that means is that you've got like a bracket system here where each state's dedicated killer is going to pair off at some point with somebody else. And we've got all these innocent people in a small town just sort of trying to understand what's going on and fighting to survive. This is only issue 2, so most people haven't figured out what's going on yet. Art is by Mariana Ignazi with Michael Walsh. Definitely looks like a lot of Michael Walsh's stuff if you've seen Silver Coin or any of his other horror stuff. Written by Walsh and James Tynion. Look, my sole critique, and it's a pretty small one, I don't feel super strongly about this. I will just say that anytime now I read a James Tynion book, I can basically count on there being some 20-something gay guys in the mix. And at a certain point, I'm like, they should be represented, but it's like, way over the top representation. Like I can always count on it. But do I dislike the characters? No. I never have found the characters not believable or that they're an impediment to the story. It's more of like this cumulative factor of them always being central to the story. But I get, like, as soon as I say it, like that does come off as pretty privileged. It's a small critique in the first place. And as I say it, I go, yeah, it's what one writer does. But then again, how many books? Well, he writes a bunch of books, but he doesn't write the majority of books. So it's a small complaint. It really is. Yeah, you know what? That's a better way of saying it, actually. It's a trope. And so what I'm saying is that I don't have a problem with the execution. The execution, there's always interesting characters. Like, sincerely, there are. I just say that, like, I can count on something happening, and I like to be a little surprised. But I always can count on that being central to each story. And that's probably if that makes sense, that's the nuance that bothers me, is that I can count on a certain thing there. But that's bothered me with other writers too. I've said sometimes when I read Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis books, there can be these talking heads where everybody's talking very witty. And I'm like, it's too predictable that I'm going to get that. So that's the level of complaint that I have. I hope that that's clear. I know I probably just came off like a jerk. I'm just talking about like how predictable it can be. That said, I love this comic a lot. I love how there's all these different crazy killers. Each one has like a certain weapon, electricity, a knife, a rifle, their fists, a hammer. And I love that they're just going to town. It legit is a cool idea of thinking of these poor people in the middle of a small town having no idea what's going on. And it's just getting started. It's just getting started. So I do recommend it. I totally recommend Exquisite Corpses. One of the better books I read this week. I love Ultimates. It's my favorite. What do you call it? It's my favorite of the Ultimate line. This one is definitely good. All I can say is that it does boil down to the Ultimates creating a version of themselves that's more than just a team of like 5 to 10 superheroes. They're coming up with a new strategy for a villain that's coming, but I don't want to say exactly what that strategy is. I just will say that it is a different idea than I've seen in a comic before, and I like to see heroes being smart and proactive and planning in this way. It's a good discussion. It's well-defined characters. The villains have been built up properly, but I don't want to spoil any of the twists and turns. Exquisite Corpses is still a very good book. I am interested to see how the characters will interact with each other. Me too. Me too. Yeah, it's a lot of campaigning, but campaigning is not something that I feel that I've seen represented in a superhero book before, so I kind of like that. And it's done in an interesting way. Thank you, by the way. I didn't properly say. Thank you very much for the super chat. Super, super, super appreciated. Really, really, really. I feel like Doom is still being hinted at exactly what's going to happen. So it's a long tail character development, but there's a lot of characters in the book, so I'm okay with them getting a slower build here and there. Okay, Chris, think about it his way from Tiny and Writing. When was the last time you saw a gay male couple in a major horror movie? Probably like the last Halloween movie, I guess. Tiny is expanding the horror genre by including them in his stories. I get it. I do. And I'm not against that because you're right. Like if I factor in all the other books, like, was there a gay couple represented in Godzilla Avengers or the Ultimates or even Blood and Thunder or Battle Beast? No, there wasn't. So if there's like one book out of all of these that did have that, is that really so much? No, it isn't. It's that if I like James Tynion's books and his writing, I read almost all of it, and I'm just saying that it's something I can count on within his books. But I did try to say that it was a small critique, and I just mean that it's a certain predictable element, but I don't think it's a bad element, and I don't think it's executed poorly. So I don't have a problem with it. I hope that's clear. I don't have well, anyway, I've said it. Here's one again I was sort of disappointed with. I really liked the Fantastic Four and Hulk Godzilla issues, and then I didn't really care for the Spider-Man and what was the last one? X-Men ones. But I'm like, okay, but now we're up to Avengers. Maybe this will win me back. And I was into it for I liked some of it. I was excited to see Jet Jaguar appear. What can I say? I'm a nerd for the character of Jet Jaguar. He's ridiculous. He seems forced. He seems out of place to a degree in Godzilla lore, but I like him. He's a robot that can grow to kaiju size. And they've got that in this. I will say that the art by George Genti is good. I like that it involves Fin Fang Foom, who is a longtime Marvel kaiju, has a lot of history. The idea of Godzilla and Fin Fang Foom battling is a pretty cool one. And it's got the new Avengers talking about this as though it just happened. So you don't have to show every moment. You can jump right to the interesting stuff as they're recapping what happened in this big battle that like really wrecked Astoria, Oregon, which is a beautiful town, by the way. And that's a good framing device. You know, having them recount it to S.H.I.E.L.D. what happened in this battle so that you can jump to all the good stuff. Here's what I don't love. A lot of like talking heads, right? Because this was Brian Bendis's team, and that's what they're referring to. So it's trying to do that sort of humor. I'm trying to find a page that really speaks to that. Bear with me. So there were things that I liked, like Fin Fang Foom and Jet Jaguar. But I thought that there were like, yeah, there's a lot of these scenes where the team is just talking with S.H.I.E.L.D. and they're sort of like bickering and stuff like that. Spider-Man is especially goofy in this. And I just felt like at a certain point, all the talking head sort of joke stuff felt a little too forced. I get that he was trying to do Bendis. This is David Walker writing. I like the framework. I like the characters that are used. I like that it can jump straight to, you know, different aspects of the battle and different conflicts. But because they're telling the story, there's lots of stuff like this, you know, pages with like all the talking heads. That was that's a Brian Michael Bendis trope. And I feel like somebody, like it's done enough by Brian Michael Bendis. To see somebody else do their take on Brian Michael Bendis, it felt so superfluous and forced and extra. I just didn't need it all. It's definitely not the worst of the Marvel Avengers books. It isn't. For that, what was the worst? I don't know. Maybe the X-Men one. But it just wasn't what I wanted out of it. So like there were two that it started with that I liked, and then there were three that I was pretty about. So that is not going to make it as my book of the week. What is the Comic Tropes After Dark book of the week? I'm going to say that Exquisite Corpses is a potential. I would say that Aliens versus Avengers is a potential. I would say definitely not Godzilla Avengers. G.I. Joe is a blast, but isn't necessarily top tier is all. Wonder Woman, no. Bug Wars turned me around, but it also like started with me not being as into it. So I'm looking for like the best of the best. Ultimates, again, like interesting ideas, just not best of the best. I did like both Battle Beast and Blood and Thunder. Okay, so I've narrowed it down now to 4 books. I haven't decided yet, but these are the 4 books that I enjoyed most this week. These are the 4 that I enjoyed the most this week. So which one was consistently good, front to back, gives you the most complete idea of a story, has the best art? Oh, this is hard. I'm thinking. I'll come back to Blood and Thunder at some point. It probably will make my list, but I'm going to knock it out for this week just because it's still doing early world building, which is good, but I find the conclusion of something a little more satisfying, although Exquisite Corpses is in the same boat as Blood and Thunder with early world building. I did like issue 1 a lot more. It hurts me to do because I do recommend both of these books. So I'm going to cut that out. It's going to be between being surprised at Battle Beast and like being very satisfied with the conclusion to Aliens versus Avengers. Oh boy. I'm having a hard time deciding. I like the artwork in this one more and the humor. I think that this one tells yeah, you know what? It's not easy, but I think I'm going to say Aliens versus Avengers issue 4 is the Comic Tropes After Dark book of the week. And here's why. It does interesting things with all of the characters. It uses them well. It chooses who they need to use and uses them well. Mr. Sinister, Captain Marvel, Wolverine, as well as some of the people that don't make it. And I won't mention everyone. They've got a clever way that they defeat the enemy. They use appropriate mythology from both Alien movies and Marvel Comics. It uses it in a way where it tells a complete story. If you know that history, it gives you maybe a little more weight to the story, but I don't think you have to know that stuff to enjoy this in and of itself. And while the previous 3 issues also similarly add weight to where the story got, I do think you probably could literally read issue 4 and feel like you got a complete story. It's pretty big. It sets it up. It uses a lot of interesting sci-fi ideas. It's dark. It's closer to like the first Alien movie in terms of its tone, but it's got the action of Aliens. I think I choose it as my book of the week. And that was not easy because I do, just to be clear, really strongly recommend some of these that apparently just became runner-up. Blood and Thunder, Battle Beast, Exquisite Corpses, all easy runner-ups. And books that I enjoyed this week would also include these 3, Ultimates, Bug Wars, and G.I. Joe. I enjoyed each of those. I would say I was kind of disappointed with these 2. I'd have a hard time recommending you spend your money on that. I hope that was useful. That was a challenge. Some weeks are harder than others to choose what the best is. And it's because there's a bunch of good stuff. Yeah, Miles was used well. Hickman has a David Finch tone. Yeah, I see that. The 20th Century Fox corner box is pretty funny. I think it's smart branding that, like, if they do Predator, Alien, Planet of the Apes, that they sort of brand it as that. Why not choose both books as your pick of the week? Because I'm just trying to be as critical as possible so that you can say, like, okay, I'm still saying that I recommend a bunch of these books and that I like certain books, but there's going to be a tier list. I believe in a nuanced thing. I'm not just going to say this good, this is the best ever, this is the worst ever. Although I will say that would be a sort of funny way to review it. Only call it the best ever and the worst ever. That would be fun. Whoops. Hold on. I was seeing what I had for unfinished artwork that I could ink. Let's see. Although it's already 7:40. Darn it. I really felt like inking, but it's getting pretty late, isn't it? And I see that, like, the numbers are dropping a little bit. So, a long show is tough for everybody to join in. I get that. Let's see, I have a few pieces that, like, I've been inking off and on the show, and I haven't finished. I had, like, this Jason Voorhees that I was trying to go with real heavy blacks and do some interesting feathering bits. I guess this is mostly done. I could add a little bit more texture to some of this Cassian Andor stuff, but that's mostly done. And I'd started this Spider-Man 2099, but I don't really love what I did with it either. So, and maybe I'll just peck away at this a little bit. I don't know that I really have any strong feelings anymore for a publisher. I'll always have certain sentimentality for certain characters. And I think that sometimes certain publishers are doing better than, others at different times. But mostly I only care about following artists and writers now. Yeah. That's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. Maybe I should offer to sell these here and there. Tell you what, I have a lot of bills to pay. Let me pull out some finished stuff, and I'll decide on potentially selling one tonight. And maybe nobody will get it, and that's fine. But let me see what I've got. Oh, you know what? I may not have. I think I may have put a bunch of my finished artwork somewhere else. Ha! Of course. Darn it. I was hoping that I'd have some of my finished pieces here and that I could sell one. This is the only real finished one. I'm trying to think of like how I could do this. I mean, I could put my PayPal up and say a number. I don't really want to make people bid. Maybe people don't even want this one. Trying to think of like what a number I'd be comfortable selling it for would be. Let me ask this before I even go too far. Out of people here, if I put a price on this right now, would this be a piece anyone would have any interest in getting, just so that I can gauge whether there's at least a few people that are potentially interested in it? And if this isn't the right piece for you, don't feel obligated to go like, yeah. And if I put the price up, don't feel like obligated to bid. I'm just trying to gauge if there's interest in buying some original art that I finish. Because I would potentially sell like pieces for, anywhere between $50 to $100. Yeah. Okay. Not much of a response, and that's fine. The new Jason look they showed for the Jason universe? I don't think I know what that is, to be honest. That's interesting. All right. Well, it was worth an experiment. Tell you what, next time I do one of these, I'll try to find some original art pieces that I think are halfway decent, and I could like offer it up for a price. Yeah, maybe I'll do that like sometime earlier. It's just an idea that popped into my head, but I could definitely. I think that like I could sell it for a fair price where everybody's happy with, like getting it at a good price, and I'm making a little bit of money. Yeah. Oh, I don't feel like anybody's responsible for bidding on anything. So it's not a big deal. I just thought I'd see if there was much interest, and that's okay. It's also like, to give myself like a little pass. It's not the biggest part of the overall audience right now. Sometimes there's a bigger audience, like at a certain time or on a certain episode. And the more people there are, that might increase some interest. But it's something I might do it, sometime soon. I may try to sell a piece. We'll see. Yeah, these days I've just been sort of messing around with the inks to sort of see what kind of a line I can get, what kind of line weight. Oh, you know what? I got really excited when I talked last week with Sean Crystal about just playing with new things. And I think I'm going to get myself some more brushes. I've had ink brushes before and haven't played with them a lot lately. But I think it's time to get some brushes. And I think that excites me. The idea of working with more traditional tools instead of just, sorry, there's like a little bug in here. Gross. Why is there a bug in here? I feel like I can't offer up the Jason because it's not finished, I wouldn't want to offer up something that I haven't finished because it doesn't feel fair. And then it puts pressure on me because I'm like, okay, they paid this certain amount. How much more should I give to it? It's more fair to finish a piece and then determine what the value should be. But anyway, yeah, I think I'm going to get myself some brushes and use traditional tools a little bit. I think that would be a lot of fun, to be honest, to do something that I haven't done in a while. It would be a little slower to watch if I was using a brush and dipping back and forth. I'd be talking a lot less if I do something like that. So I may do it as more of a dedicated art stream or just on my own time to set expectations. Anybody else got any plans for this summer for going to like a comic convention of any kind? I do not. I wish I could go to something like San Diego Comic-Con, but too rich for my blood. But I'd love to go to that one. I do have plans to go to New York Comic-Con, but that's because I visit like a friend of mine that lives up there, and he's getting actually like married a little before the convention, so it all combines to make sense time-wise for me. Let's see. Let's see. Awesome shading on the arm. Well, that's kind of you. Brushes are fun, but brush pens are so convenient. Exactly. You're not going to get the same archival quality of ink. I know that. Like this will, probably turn brown. Yeah. Heroes Con, I would have loved to go to. Baltimore always put together a good one. Planning a trip to San Diego Comic-Con. Very cool. Very cool. Dip pens are fun. I've got some somewhere near here. Yeah. It begs for some ink and brush. I've already started doing this one with a lot of like tech pens and brush pens. So yeah. Let's see. Oh, I've heard Lightbox is pretty cool. I've heard Lightbox is cool. That could be fun. Are you going to hit up Cybfest, the Transformers convention at Kent Station? I don't know about it. And I don't really get Transformers toys, so I don't know if it would make sense to go there. I don't know if there were like artists or something, then maybe. I used to love Transformers toys, but I don't need to clutter my house with more things. Well, just to be clear, I've definitely used brushes a lot. I just haven't lately. If I got some brushes, I'd probably want to get myself a nice Winsor Newton like Series 7. That's one that I like working with. But I appreciate the advice. I agree. Yeah, if you don't use them a lot, yeah, you're going to mess them up. But I would get one that like I've used in the past and been comfortable with. And I really like this Series 7 by Winsor Newton. I think that's kind of a classic. Does anybody out there make art and have like dedicated, tools that they want to use when they like, just your favorite? Do you have a favorite pen, brush, paint, ink? Anything that like you're like, oh, this is one that I always like to work with? Just curious if anybody has a favorite anything. I will say that the one thing that I love a lot, I've just found that this Pentel Graph Gear 1000 lead holder, I just love how it's balanced. I love what it does for me. The Tachigawa G Pen. Sure. I've played with one of those a few times before. I need to pick one up the next time I get to Japan and go to Hokkaido. Raphael 8404 is really good. You've got a Cintiq 22. Yep. Very fun. Very, very fun. I got to go to work tomorrow, but I'll give you an update on this. I'm definitely progressing with my next episode of Comic Tropes, and There is a chance that I could have it out this weekend, and if it's not out this weekend, it really should be pretty shortly after that. Yeah. So I think it's one I'm going to be proud of. I hope it does well. I was really surprised that Qbert was not something the algorithm had any interest in, but that's life. That's okay. That's life. What's that song? Is that how it goes? I'm still proud of it. I liked how it came out. Oh, what else? Okay, some people talking about things they like. I like that. A look term 1917 Dragriffle? Don't know that one. Yeah, Micron pens can be a lot of fun. Thank you for watching Trash Movie Bonanza. We have fun doing it. We're going to do another one before Superman comes out that's sort of related. Yeah, Tombow drafting pencils. Tombow makes some really nice stuff. They do have online classes, just to be clear. If you go to the Qbert School, they definitely have online classes you can take. What else for art? Any comic tropes video gives me life. You're kind. Anyway. Oh, I didn't have this centered very well, did I? I'm going to do a lot of black in the middle here. So I'll come back to that. Let me just work on this hand real quick. I was going to not finish this one, but Jeff Darrow said that I should, so I will. If Jeff Darrow tells you to keep working on a piece of art, you listen. I'm so lucky to have met him. He's just the kindest. So humble. But what a creative force. I've been lucky because of the show to meet a few creators. That I definitely know that I'm lucky. It means something to me. It might not mean something to and it probably would to any of us, but it might not mean something to the next guy on the street. But the people I've been able to meet through this show, including my viewers, means a lot to me. It really does. But getting to create friends with a guy like Jim, having certain professionals drop in semi-regularly is always a treat. But also just getting to know people that are like me, that just really like to read comics and admire the art form. It's quite a privilege. Quite a privilege. Oh. Yeah, that's true. Hard-boiled probably isn't the easiest one to find anymore. Huh. Any sketchbook brands you'd recommend? Boy, I don't know if I'd necessarily be the one to recommend those. That's a good question, but I don't know off the top of my head. Oh, Chrissy reminded me of something I should share. I don't know if West Coast Dave Avengers is still watching because he's watching from a plane, but Dave and I met up for coffee after picking up our comics this past Wednesday, and we got to meet a bit of a local celebrity, and it went really well. So we're there in Tacoma, Washington, at a small but nice local comic shop, coffee shop, and the people that come in after us, Dave, I see sort of notice and stiffen up, and he's like, oh my God. He's like, look at who's here. And I'm like, I didn't recognize right away, but Dave did. And Dave, was courageous, and he just said, hey, Ben. And it was, oh, hold on. I'm forgetting exactly how to pronounce his last name. Give me 2 seconds, but it was a celebrity. Ben Gibbard. It was Ben Gibbard, lead singer of Death Cab for Cutie, with Nick, the bassist. And they were just there getting some coffee like us. And Dave said hello. And, you know, I think all he was planning to do was just say, appreciate your music, something like that. But they both came over with their coffee and just talked to us for like 20 minutes, just about whatever. We just talked about, like, you know, sports and music and Seattle. And boy, were they nice. So yeah, I'm sure that, like, even if you don't listen to that band all the time, you've heard at least Crooked Teeth. I mean, that's a pretty popular hit song. And so yeah, they're from here in the Seattle area, and they were just as nice as could be. Just came over and talked, and that was really, really fun. That was really nice to see, you know, local celebs and have zero ego about any of it. Just go, like, you know, like, talk to us like normal people. So anyway, yeah, really, really nice day. And thanks, Dave, for being the brave one to just say hello to a celebrity. It was funny. I saw another patron at the coffee shop kind of watching us. He was in the corner and his mouth was just sort of agape. I could tell that he recognized Ben Gibbard and just was like, he was like, yeah, let me try to duplicate his face since I can sort of see what I look like. Like something like that. Anyway, so that was fun. That was fun. And by the way, that song Crooked Teeth has 2 music videos. There's one that was a cool animated version by Rob Schraub, creator of Scud the Disposable Assassin. So creating a connection with comics. I think I'm going to call it a night. I would love to do more, but I'm also really hungry and I've got work. I've got all sorts of work to do. So yeah, just know that Ben Gibbard and Nick Harmer are super, super kind, down-to-earth guys. All right, folks, thank you for the chat, for your attention, for your hilarious jokes, your opinions, the super chats. Always really fun talking to a live audience, but also for anybody watching this on the rewind, I hope you know that I appreciate you as well. It means so much that people actually watch my silly little news show, and it's a lot of fun for me. It's a way for me to just connect with comics and connect with a comics reading audience. So yeah, I really like doing this show. I will be back next week, and with any luck, I will have a new Comic Tropes uploaded before then. If not, it'll be really close to then, okay? So hard at work on one, and you are all the best. Take care. Have a great evening. Bye.